I'm coming in self-funded.
Yeah.
I'm spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars because I love it. And I want to push myself to have this goal of being a better driver. This one shop should cost $2 million.
That's wild.
As of right now, I hate the K-Series in any Nissan.
Why is that?
The adrenaline rush of finding something cool. I still see those marketplace deals that I don't need. But if it's cheap enough, I'm just like, let me get that.
Yeah.
I can save you.
Yeah.
You know?
Where should your tire pressure be for drifting?
What do you think?
So if you want to slide, I'm assuming you'd run a higher pressure?
Do we want to slide though? You want to put money on it? I'll put money on it.
$1,000.
$1,000, let's do it right here. Y'all saw it. He's got photos of it. I'm not confident.
Welcome back to another episode of the Street Alpha Podcast. I am your host, Tukes, and today we are in Florida. We are at the compound here with AdamLZ. So, you guys know Adam. I'm not really sure if he even needs an introduction because if you are a car guy, you watch YouTube, you know who he is. He's one of the biggest automotive influencers. Do you consider yourself the biggest or one of?
I'd say probably one of. There's definitely people that are bigger than me. I like to identify as like I'm a real diehard enthusiast, right? And in that category, there's not a lot of big players. But in like the supercar world, there's a lot of big names, you know?
Very humble answer. That's Adam for you. So before we begin, let's give a round of applause for AdamLZ. Yeah. I know nobody's in here, dude.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you doing this. I think I didn't really reach out to you to like a year ago or anything like that, like I normally do with guests. Mm-hmm. I think I just went up to you because I figured you wouldn't answer your DMs because you're so busy. I'm sure you get a lot of DMs. But you did. You told me at not GTR Festival, I think it was SEMA. Mm-hmm. You were like, yeah, just DM me. And normally when you hear that, it's like he's never going to answer. I'll just be in the flood of DMs. So, but you did.
I'm probably more on my DMs than I am my emails, which is really sad.
Really?
Like, that's kind of embarrassing to say. Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. So if you guys ever want to do anything with Adam, make sure
maybe cut that part out. No,
make sure you DM him. There's a lot to unpack. I know you've done several podcasts and your whole life is pretty much on YouTube for the most part. So what drew you to get into YouTube? You started the BMX channel sort of, and then you kind of, transitioned into cars. But what was the initial reason for why you even picked up a camera in the first place? Yeah,
in the really early days, and this is like early YouTube, like 2008, it was definitely a different landscape than it was now. Like I remember the stuff that I watched was like, is it a good idea to microwave this? Or like, should I blend this? Like that was YouTube back in the day. And there was, I think I was in middle school, and there was this one guy that was just like, a couple grades above me, and he would post skate videos. And everyone in class would talk about it, like, oh, did you see so-and-so skate video? I was like, man, that's so cool. I want to do that with my BMX bike.
Yeah.
But I sucked, and this dude was like really good. So like I asked for a camcorder for Christmas. I was probably like 12 or something like that. And like I would just set it up on a tripod and do like bunny hops in the road. And I did that. And the original channel was BMX Guitar 5. So it was like a hybrid of like doing bike tricks in the middle of the street and like trying to play really bad guitar cover songs.
So that was the inspiration.
Yeah.
Right. Well, how long were you doing the BMX thing for?
Probably did it religiously up until maybe, I don't even know what year it would be, but let's say I graduated college in like 2017. I probably would have been riding pretty heavily until like maybe like 2018, 2019.
You have this, you seem to have this like this ambition to get things done. Was that always a thing, or that was something that you kind of developed over the years of doing content?
That's interesting. I don't even know if I'd say it's ambition as much as like severe like ADD, where I just like my mind's always all over the place, and I want to finish one thing so I can move on to the next. It drives me nuts to like leave things half done. So I'm like, when I start something, it's all I can think about. I obsess over it. Yeah. The 4-rotor Supra is a great example of it. Right. Like every night before I go to bed, I'm like researching more stuff about headers and this and that, because I just like want to figure it out, Yeah. And I've got so many other projects teed up, and until I figure it out, I'm like, that's all I want to focus on. Yeah. I saw you at a GTR festival. Yeah. And how many passes do you think you've done in that car that day, like at the event? Oh, the white car? Yeah, the white car. Yeah. No, it's a funny joke. People used to call me 50th Try Adam, and it was like it was almost like used as a diss, but it was always something I was proud of, because it's like I'd always be the person that kept on trying and kept on trying and kept on trying. Yeah. Like that's how you figure it out, right? Like you saw, like I did some not so great passes, but they got better and better and better. Yeah. Like that progression, or that like getting better every little bit of the way. Like that's the addiction that gets me to do the things that I do, whether it's car stuff, building cars, racing, playing guitar, everything. It's always just hunting for that, like that progression, I guess.
Yeah. I was standing next to Lee when you were doing that, and he was like, Adam's going to get it. He's going to keep going until he gets it, until he's satisfied at least, but he's probably going to keep running it no matter what. I'm not sure if you're going to run it until it blew up, but
I'm not normally like that, but like until I'm like almost there, and then I'll chill, you know?
Yeah. So you grew up in Connecticut, right? Now I'm from New York, and one of the biggest challenges we face as content creators in the Northeast area is the weather. Yeah. So did that have any impact on your early YouTube career at all?
I wouldn't say a huge impact, because like I was fortunate enough, at least in the winter, where like I would go drive a few hours to like go to an indoor skate park or whatever, because that was like, I didn't really do anything with cars back then. It was all bike things. So, you know, I could drive and go to an indoor skate park or tough it out in the cold. But that was a large reason why I moved to Florida for college. You know, half of it was the cost. It was way cheaper than me going to school up in the north, like literally 6 times cheaper to go to school in Florida than up there.
I believe it.
But the year-round weather of being able to do what I love to do all the time was huge.
You weren't doing car content yet before you moved?
No, so when I lived in Connecticut, like I had my E46.
Okay.
And like it would like be sprinkled like in videos, but like I shouldn't say I wasn't a real car guy. I've always been into cars, but like the extent of my modifications was like coilovers and like LED headlights. You know, it was the automatic 325i. I wasn't doing turbo changes and stuff like that.
So who are you looking up to then at that time? Because you're one of like the earlier, obviously, you know, automotive influencers. So like who was there to watch? Yeah,
you know, it's interesting. There was I feel like part of what got me to start incorporating car stuff in my videos was there's another channel that I watched in the BMX space, and his name was Booker123, and he was like this channel in the UK, made BMX videos are very similar to what I was uploading, but he had a Cupra, which would be similar to like a 1.8 turbo like GTI. And he would put sections in his videos of him like ripping B roads in England, and I thought it was the coolest thing. So I was like, oh, I want to put some of that in my videos. Yeah. So like when I started incorporating the car stuff, it was always like, you know, you'd watch like a video of like someone installs a new exhaust on their car. Yeah. But it's like a half hour of BS that you don't care about, and then there's like no good exhaust clips. When I put car content in, it was like always just like all exciting, like full rips, like good sounds. Yeah. The stuff that I wanted to see.
Right. So was there anybody else at that time that kind of inspired you?
There wasn't like, I feel like automotive YouTube.
I know, that's what I'm asking. Yeah.
Wasn't really a thing. I remember one of the first videos I made with my 240 right here. I was heavily inspired by that dude in blue. He's like a OG car YouTuber. And back in the day, he owned, like, I think he was like one of the pioneers of the, I don't know what you would call it, like the electronic music, dolly shots around the car.
On the skateboard, all
to
that stuff.
Switch in the car with audio / car review, like relatable non-movie production car review. Yeah. So I would definitely say he was an inspiration. I didn't really like adopt that style of content, but like you go and watch my first S13 video, like I ripped him off.
Well, shout out to that dude in blue, because I watched him too back then, and he was doing some cool stuff with even cameras, like the skateboard thing. He would put a camera on to get those dolly shots, and he was using whatever he had, which is pretty cool. So there was a lot of influencers in that area, and there still are from Connecticut. Yeah. There's Jimmy Oaks, Tommy Effie as well. Yeah. Were you with those guys at all at that time? Or
I mean, me and Jimmy go way back. Like we've known each other since I was probably like, I don't know, maybe like 14 or 15. Like he used to ride me to skate parks when he had a license and I didn't.
Oh wow.
He helped me install my first set of coilovers on my E46, and like we did it like really wrong, but it like we go way back, and it's funny because Jimmy was like, he was an anti-YouTube person. He was like, oh, I'll never do that. I'll never do that. Yeah, it always bummed me out because he was like your friend that was like super good at doing everything. Like he had LS swapped his 300ZX in his garage, and was like, you know, he's like a Volkswagen guy at the time. So he like was tucking wires and doing all that stuff. And I was like, man, you should do YouTube. You should do YouTube. He's like, nah. And then I think it was like after I'd moved to Florida, he started getting into it. And like, he's got such a good personality. He's so talented. He's so smart that it's sick to see him be able to do what he does and like follow his passion instead of working some desk job.
Right. And he's still in Connecticut. Yeah. Still doing content, still, you know, always posting stuff, doing different swaps. So it's pretty cool to see. He's definitely somebody that I still watch just as much as I watch you and TJ. So how did your relationship with, you know, I'm not sure if you knew TJ back then or if you were watching his content, because you guys kind of grew together, sort of.
Yeah, I think technically TJ might have been like earlier than me on the car stuff. I didn't really watch any of it, and that was nothing in particular. I just really didn't watch like much car content on YouTube. But we had crossed paths like pretty early on, and like it's interesting. We work together and we've done like a few collabs here and there, but we were always like in our own lanes. And I still feel the same way today. Like he does his stuff, I do mine. I respect what he does a lot. He respects what I do. We do different stuff, but it's kind of the same in a way.
Yeah. You guys did I think you guys there was a time, I think it was last year or 2 years ago when you guys did the Skyline. You guys both had Skylines at the same time you were doing the giveaway. Yeah. Was that intentional or that was something that, because you guys were kind of playing around with, you were trolling a little bit with
No,
people.
it was accidental. It was unintentional. And like I was trying to, originally we talked about trying to do some sort of like battle, because it's one of those situations, and this happens a lot inside like the car community, where like you do the same thing as someone and you have two options. You can be really bummed and you can be butthurt about it, or try to work together. So I was like, TJ, let's turn this into a battle and we can amplify both of our giveaways if we kind of like lean into this as like a challenge versus both of us doing the same thing and like being annoyed with each other.
Right.
But it just didn't work out timing wise. His car was getting painted by someone else, so it took longer. So we weren't able to ship the cars out and get them in the same place.
Yeah, I the biggest thing you said there was like, you know, instead of you guys having some drama over it or anything like that, as working together. I think that's kind of missing in the automotive space. I think people kind of let their egos get in the way. And what I noticed about you is you're pretty humble and you know how to deal with things, which is, I feel, a big reason as to why you have what you have here. I didn't even talk about the compound. Like driving up, first of all, I should have spoke about that first, honestly. Driving up, I was actually on the wrong road. I don't know if I want to disclose where you are or whatever, but
it happens.
Getting in here, it's like it's like Disneyland or something like that.
Oh, and you haven't even seen it either.
Yeah, we haven't even seen the rest of the facility. We just walked into your office, you were editing, and then now we're in here, which is crazy. But I was talking to my guy Dre about it, and it's wild that you're able to achieve this, and people who do this for a living or mechanics don't even have probably a third of this.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy to me that you were able to kind of grow off of YouTube and have a facility and have probably 3 different businesses out of this?
Yeah, I want about that. There's always new things popping up left and right.
Right. But the main ones like merch, you have Drift HQ and then
I'd say it's like 3 or 4 depending on how you look at it. But it's really Sim HQ is a big new one we launched. Drift HQ, LZMFG. I guess that's 3. Yeah. 3. We'll go with 3. Yeah.
So doing YouTube, right? For people who want to become influencers in the automotive space, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned in your journey to success in this format?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've always just looked at it like the long game. I feel like that helped me a lot in the early days. Like as it applied to BMX, every time I went to a skate park, it didn't matter who it was. Like I'd go out of my way to just be nice and like introduce myself and make friends with someone. And what that did is like created an army of people that whenever anyone talks shit online, that person at the skate park I met that day had my back. Because like at that time, like I was the first real influencer in the BMX space. So I got a lot of flack. Now all the pros that talk shit about me have YouTube channels and they're doing the same exact thing. But like at the time I was like the board that everyone was throwing darts at. So I just did everything that I could to really just maintain that image and just be as kind as I could to everyone. And, you know, I feel like that long-term perspective is like kind of always how I've looked at it. I tell companies, I go, look, I'm not going anywhere. Like I'm trying to do this for as long as I can. So like if I want to work with you, I want to work with you for 10 years. So like the conversations and the way you approach things, I think are different when you have like a long-term perspective. Right.
With that being said, like how do you manage to kind of stay true to your roots, right? Your content started more like a vlog, right? And then it's interesting because like when you take the camera away from you, you have somebody else filming you, it can kind of change the perspective of how people see your content. So how do you stay true to your roots? Like, do you feel like you are staying true to that or you've shifted away from that?
It's a good point. I kind of go back and forth and I'd love to incorporate more like vlog stuff. And I do try to like grab the handheld camera and try to like mix it in. I think the biggest challenge is just when I started doing more of the vlog stuff, I did live a lot more of a regular life. Where now I'm doing a lot of meetings, a lot of work on my computer. Like I'm not doing as much, I don't want to say as much fun stuff because what I do is really fun, but it's just less vloggable content in a way. And sometimes when I've drawn like a much like clearer line between my work and my life, where before every single thing that I did, I filmed. Now it's like sometimes on the weekends, like I might go and drive a really cool car that people haven't seen me drive in years to a car meet or something and not film it. Where like in the early days, I would film that and like it'd be stuff that people would be stoked about, but like sometimes I just want to do it for me. not do it and be thinking about the video and stressing, is the battery gonna die? Did I miss that shot? Like, you know how it is.
Yeah. It's hard to get away from that. Like, you're always thinking about the battery, if it's in focus, the camera being heavy. So how do you kind of like, do you check out and realize like, oh, I'm doing too much of this, or maybe I have to go back to doing vlog content, or have to hold the camera every now and then, like, or it's just like whatever you want?
Sometimes. I mean, I'd say like right now, like as of the new year, I've kind of like tried to do like a pretty like hard reset with the channel.
Okay.
And kind of take like a different structure. Yeah. But for me, it's almost the other end of the spectrum. I feel like I've been so ADD with content that it got to the point where you just never had any idea what was going on in a video. Yeah. I'd be working on like 8 different cars. There'd be this car in the dyno, this car's getting wrenched on, and it made it really hard to follow along. Mm-hmm. And I almost got like too lost in my own content, if that makes sense. So I've tried to implement more structure into it this year, and I've tried to do a better job at storytelling and really explaining the why and like the steps in the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Right.
So it's almost the opposite of the vlog approach, but it's been received pretty well. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
I'm sure when you're choosing a car now, it's probably changed from back then, right? You probably picked the car back then because you actually enjoyed it, right? You probably do the same thing now, but your approach is different because at the end of the day, you have a business to run. So has that kind of changed as well, like the cars you choose and the content you make with them?
Yes and no. I mean, I've always believed that like people can really sense passion behind the camera, and it's really important to me that what I'm working on, I'm passionate about, because if I'm not, like, it is so clear in the content. Okay. Maybe I just have I'm a really bad actor, but for me, like, people know when I'm genuinely excited about something. It can be the shittiest, cheap E36, and I'm just so excited about it that like that content would do twice as good as if I went and got a brand new Ferrari. Right. So I think as long as the passion's there, it's important. Mm-hmm. But there are people that I know in the YouTube space that like they get a car because they know it will do numbers, mm-hmm. and they can act excited about that car, and it works for them.
Right.
I just can't.
You can't.
Yeah.
You're a big Nissan guy, right?
I would say so. I just think that like for what I like, they just made a lot of good cars.
So early on, you had what was it? Was it a Skyline?
Give me the color.
White.
4-door?
I think it was a 4-door.
So it was a white 4-door. That'd be my R32 sedan.
Yes, the Skyline R32, which is crazy to have early on. But that was the first car I actually think that I saw back then. You working on, right?
Yeah.
So what inspired you picking that up?
It was interesting. I actually had I'd gone over to, it might have actually it was either right before I went to Japan or right after I went to Japan. I just wanted a right-hand drive car to just practice drifting on. Yeah. And it was just cheap, and it already had an RB25 in it. So I was like, oh, this is a good deal. You know, fast forward, it turned out it was a blown up engine and was just a shady importer, like 90% of them. Yeah, like it wasn't like I really liked R32 sedans or anything. It was just like the cheapest tool at the time.
Yeah. How did you get familiar with that platform though? Like, what, you were just doing research on it, or you had friends that had the platform? Like, what got you into that?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I really didn't know much about it. I had a buddy, Kevin Lawrence, that worked at Injuku, and he was kind of like my RB resource because he had competed with an RB, so he helped me a lot when like it came time to building my engine and stuff like that. Yeah. But the bones of that car is basically an S13. You know, the front end's a little bit different, rear end's all S13 stuff, and I'd worked on like 2 or 3 S13s up to that point. Yeah. So it's interesting you brought up that car though, because that was like the first car that I feel like I really turned a lot of wrenches on.
Yeah, that's what I started noticing. You were doing a lot with that car.
It's gone through a lot of phases. That's like the first like real, I don't want to call it an R&D car, but that car's been through so many different phases. Like that's what I'm doing with the 4-rotor now is what I did with that car before. Like experiencing different turbo sizes all the time, changing the exhaust, changing this, seeing what it does. I just like, that's like the car that started the pursuit of perfection, I think.
Yeah. And it's important that you say that because we were speaking earlier about that, and I walked in here and you were like, oh dude, I still have to edit a video or something like that, which you wouldn't expect with the level you're at. So it's kind of cool that you're still like actively and like always trying to better yourself and your brand and edit, you know, and kind of grow it the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, Mike does a way better job at me than editing, and he probably would have been down to stay and finish it, but like, you know, he had already stayed like 15 minutes after when he would normally leave, so I was like, I got it, don't worry. You were running late, so I was like, I'll finish it. I like hopping behind the computer every once in a while. I'll put some memes in the videos, purposely edit a few clips bad and see if anyone notices. I'm known for my double clips, because it used to be I would be editing in my truck and I'd hit the space bar twice when I'm going over bumps, so I'd put the same clip in twice.
You think we give a about your FC? For hot pit?
Sometimes I'll purposely not put an outro because I get too lazy to like put the outro in. That's how you know that I edited it.
Yeah. We'll be on the lookout for that.
Yeah.
Now the Nissan. Before we get off that, you had an RB25 in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you've had RB26 as well, right? Between the two, what do you prefer? Because you have cars that you still have an RB25 in.
What's the purpose?
What do you mean?
You know, what do I prefer for what, right?
Okay.
Yeah, like each has its own pros and cons. So what's the purpose? What are we doing with the car?
Well, you don't really. You're more of a drifter, right?
Sure.
So let's say drag racing.
Drag racing, probably RB26 all day.
Why?
Head flows better. It's a proper race motor, the RB25. At least most of them are going to be the like hydraulic lifter ones, unless you got a Neo.
Okay.
The RB26 is just like a better package out of the box, and I think there's a bit more aftermarket support for it. I like RB25s just because of variable cam timing, but with a 26, you can put VCam on it, which is even better.
Yeah.
So if we're talking a 26 with VCam, like that kind of trumps all.
Yeah.
But it's just expensive. Like for the price, you can get into a Neo way cheaper.
People do 25 head on a 26 sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now a Neo head as opposed to a 26 head.
I don't think there would be any benefit. Like a Neo head's actually pretty similar to a 26 head. Still wouldn't flow as well, but you'd get the VCT. I think the big reason why you'd see that is a similar reason why you see 1.5 JZs, and that's that someone already has all the accessories and all of the manifolds and everything for a 25 Neo, and then they rod knock their bottom end. Maybe their buddy has a 2.6 bottom end, so they just slap it on. That's why you saw a lot of 1.5 JZs in Japan, because they had a 1J, rod knock the bottom end, have all the manifolds and accessories for the 1J head, slap a 2J bottom end on it.
Normally, like it'd be like, oh, you know, this head flows better, you throw it on there, but like you kind of went into super like detail with that, so it's pretty interesting.
I love the learning part of it. That's what gets me excited. A new platform, a new engine. Like I'm about to be doing some K-Series stuff, and like even though there's so much knowledge and stuff out there about K-Series, I'm so excited to like figure out how things work inside the engine and just like put my own hands on it. You know?
Have you ever had a K-Series?
I have a K20 S13. So that's
actually, I don't think I've seen that one.
I'll show you later. I bought the car like as is. And then that CRX has got a B in it, a B18.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That's the car you do laps like the circuit with, right? It seems like you enjoy that car. I saw you doing reverse donuts in that.
Oh yeah, I mean, just like I'm a Honda boy at heart, because my like hero car when I was growing up was my dad's Prelude. I wanted that car so bad. That was like the coolest car I'd ever been in as a kid. I'd never been in anything faster. My dad would be doing burnouts and like getting second gear rubber, popping VTEC. Like that was the coolest shit when I was growing up.
Especially if you're in the Northeast, because you grew up around people like Sonic, do you know Sonic? You know, Mac, those guys were always drag racing or street racing, I'm sorry. Those guys were always street racing. And I feel like that was in the Northeast. That's like, if you were into cars, you probably were at, you know, a street race or a local meetup with some of those guys.
Yeah, and I never crossed paths with them back in the day before I like really got into it. But even just like in my area, like I was always in Danbury, Connecticut, and in Danbury there's like a lot of Hondas.
Yeah.
So it was just like you're always around it, you're always seeing them. And I just remember going shopping with my dad. We checked out a couple Integras, wound up getting his Prelude, and like saw some cool stuff. Yeah.
So what is the thought process when you choose the cars you want to buy? Because you have so many cars, right? And at this point, it's kind of like, are you looking at trying to restore them more so, or what you're going to do with them in terms of a project for content? Like, what's the thought process with that?
It's interesting because I feel like there's like two ends of the spectrum. I kind of fell down a rabbit hole for a while where I was getting annoyed with myself because as a shop, we got so good at building cars. Yeah. But I kept buying the shittiest examples because I was cheap. So like I'd end up, my R32 is a great example. I started off with like a really not great R32. Like I had some rust, I had a lot of body work, and then it ends up having all this time and money put into it. And at the end, I'm like, I wish I just spent a little more in the beginning and started with a nicer car. And then I went to the opposite end of the spectrum. Now I'm like trying to buy the nicest, most perfect example, almost so much so that I don't want to modify it.
Yeah, that's the balance. That's
but at least when I do modify it, like my R32 GTR started off as a really nice car. Okay. So it's like, I don't need to do paint work. I don't need to do body work. It's not rusty. So I'm like investing my time and energy into at least like a half decent car to start. Right. But then I still see those marketplace deals that I don't need. But if it's cheap enough, I'm just like, let me get that. Yeah. I can save you. Yeah. You know?
And you're still buying off marketplace, or are you?
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah, dude. You know, the adrenaline rush of finding something cool that like the K20 S13 is a perfect example. Like I would never build a K-Series S13, but I've always been intrigued by it. And like I think I got that car for like $5 or $6 grand because it wasn't running right. And I just get to play around with it. I know the chassis. I don't know the engine. I learned how to tune a little bit more on that car.
So you prefer the K series in there over like let's say SR20? As
of right now, I hate the K series in any Nissan.
Why is that?
They vibrate so much. It's insane. So here's the thing. Basically, the way that the swap kit is right now.
Okay.
And no disrespect to Toge Factory because they're the only ones doing this.
Okay.
By only ones doing this, I mean they're the only ones really making mounts. It just mounts really low, and there's a lot of harmonics when you have like the really low center point of gravity on the engine. And I think you have to like remove the balance shaft or whatever. I don't know K series, so don't mark my words. But they just vibrate so much, it's like unbearable.
What kind of mounts do you have on there?
So they're solid mounts because of how it is.
Okay.
Yeah, and because it's mounted so low, because you got to think they're usually mounted up top, like in the middle.
Yeah.
They're mounted on the bottom down by the pan, so it's like undrivably vibrating. But they're working on a solution right now that I think should be out soon, where it's like you like notch the subframe and you can run poly mounts. So
I was gonna say, yeah, because if you run poly mounts, you'll definitely that'll clean up a lot of the vibration actually if you're running solid mounts. But aside from that, if there was no vibration, what would your thoughts be on that?
I just don't know the platform enough yet.
Okay.
So like that'd be the best way to put it. You know, I know SRs. I've been around the block. I know KAs. I don't know the K series in enough to give a real opinion. I know on paper, I know the heads flow a bunch. I know that they make really good power. For drifting, we tend to break the rods in the stock motors a lot because we put too small of a turbo on them, and the stock rods don't like that. So a lot of people were just going, oh, in drag racing, they make 600 horsepower on a stock long block, so I'm going to do the same thing. But in drifting, we try to make torque really early, and we try to make a lot of it. Drag racing, it's usually a little bit more like flat torque, linear power band, easier on the rods.
Right.
All the drifters were blowing up and throwing rods through the blocks of their first K series.
I don't even know if I've seen or even heard of people running K series for drifting.
Yeah.
That's probably why, right?
Yeah, I've kind of been sitting on the sidelines because I was like intrigued by it, and then I saw everyone blowing them up, and I was like, I'm gonna let y'all figure this out, and then I'll jump in.
I feel like that's probably the issue with a lot of I feel like a lot of setups, like even with the RB, one of the things that they're like implementing is like a wide journal crank. That way that you can bring the boost in a little bit sooner. So you don't like crush bearings or anything like that. So it's interesting that the K series kind of has like a similar thing, but just affecting a different part of the motor. Like
I mean, the K series thing is it's really just like, you know, the whole allure of it is that how cheap you can get K series. So people don't want to build a motor because if they're building a motor, they might as well have built an SR because it's easier. You don't need to buy the swap kit and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think people just looked at it like, oh, the drag racing people make all this power on a stock long block, so I should be able to too.
Right.
But we just asked for different things out of the car.
Right. All right. So let's go back to, because we got the car talk is so like, it takes you so off track.
Yeah.
So let's go back to your journey to the compound, right? Your first move or your first shop, was that in Connecticut or was that here?
No, so I've had a lot of different spaces. So I started off with like, it might have been like 500 square feet.
Yeah.
I couldn't work on cars there. It was just merch.
Okay.
Moved into another space. It was like 1,000 square feet. Couldn't work on cars there. Just merch. I think I stored like a car there, but it was like my landlord was kind of about it. And when I got my first house, which would have been like 2015, 2016, somewhere around there, that's like really my first shop. I built out that home garage to be a space I could work on cars in. I had a lift, I had air, I had like the things that you would need to work.
Yeah.
Before that, you know, I lived in a townhouse, like a single car garage, and like I'd wrench on my S13 in there a little bit, but never had a proper shop.
You never had a shop in Long Island, did you? It was always Connecticut?
Yeah. Well, I never had a shop in Connecticut. So.
Oh, at all? So it was always Florida?
Yeah.
Okay. See, that's the thing. Like watching your content back then, you can't really tell the difference.
So to be fair, there was probably like a solid 6 months or so where I worked out of Tommy's shop in Connecticut. I hung out there in the summer, and like I hate Florida in the summer. So any reason I could get out of here and go hang out up there, I'd work my Skyline, probably where you watched a lot of the early videos.
Yeah.
I was wrenching on that car in my dad's driveway or in Tommy's shop or in Jimmy's shop.
You were at some point doing some stuff with Jordan when you had the Supra.
Yep.
So I think around that time, I think that's when I started getting confused because I'm like, well, does he have a shop out here or?
I still identify as a Northeastern boy.
Really?
Yeah.
It seems like you're more like a Florida guy now at this point.
I don't know about that. No disrespect, but I don't know. Just people from like Northeastern is a little different.
What do you mean?
I don't know. Just like a little rougher around the edges in a good way. Florida people are a little soft.
Yo, you bold.
I mean, look, there's Florida people that aren't soft, but like it's different in the Northeast.
No, you're 100% right.
Like the way that I talk with my friends from the Northeast, I can't talk to my friends in Florida like that.
Why they get sensitive?
No, yeah, everyone's they're a little bit nicer down here. They don't have to deal with the cold. You know, everyone's PC. They get along well. I remember my first friend group down here didn't even swear, and I'm like, I was like the odd one out. Like, but up north, I feel like it was just, I don't know, just rough around the edges.
No, it is. I mean, being from New York, that's just a common thing.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed about Florida is that everything's like slow here. Like the driving is slower. The people, like there's no, even working.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure if you experienced that, like finding people
You're
to work,
from the
but
city. I mean, you're not from the city, but like.
I'm actually from Long Island. So people from New York would be like, you're not from New York, you're from Long Island.
But
it's
still,
like one of those things.
Things move faster. I mean, I'm from Connecticut, but I grew up in a farm town. So like Florida to me was so fast paced compared to where I grew up. Because where I grew up,
Really?
like, nothing's open past 8 p.m.
Ah, okay. So
it's
different.
It just depends on where you are, right?
Right.
Part of the reason why I stayed down in Florida is just at least for what I did at the time, the people that I was working with on the merch side and on the car side, like I think there's a really great pool of talent down here. So
100%.
I feel like people are lazier up north.
Really?
Yeah, it's just the weather, dude. We got to deal with, we got weather, you got state income tax. Like there's just a lot of stuff to be annoyed about up north. In Florida, like everybody's kind of got it nice. So like,
Yeah, but you got to pay your bills.
yeah, but you know what I don't know. The rougher around the edges, same goes with like people are just like a little bit more, fuck you, Down here, it's just like, I'm from Florida. Of course I'll work. I don't know.
Interesting way to look at it. Never looked at it that way. But
yeah, I mean,
either
look,
way.
there's exceptions on either side, right? It could just be my experience is different than your experience, but.
Right. So what was the process or thought process when you were looking for a place? Did it fall into your lap? Was it an opportunity or you saw this on, Zillow or something?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like all the above. I was sharing a shop with Precision Sport Industries, a BMW shop here in Central Florida. And I was just outgrowing the space. I think I had 1,700 square feet. Every day I was moving cars outside, getting yelled at for taking up parking spaces. We're tripping over each other. I mean, every shop knows the deal. Like it's nothing new. So I started looking at buildings. I really wanted my own building. I wanted more space. And my goal was to get like 6,000 square feet. But where I lived at the time in Oviedo is just on the pricier side. So like my budget, what I got approved for like a SBA loan was like $2 million, which I think at the time would have been like maybe like 200 grand down or something. And I wound up finding a few places that were like, I was like, damn, this place is so cool, so great. Go through the process to get the loan, which is not an easy thing to do.
For an SBA loan?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then by the time that I even got anywhere with the loan, cash buyer, boom, comes up, swoops property. So like I kind of got frustrated and I started expanding my search, looking a little bit farther away. And it got to the point where I was like, I'm just not going to be able to get a building. I'm going to get a piece of land.
Yeah.
And I'll just put a concrete pad down, steel building and just build slowly.
Yeah.
And as I was looking for land, this place popped up. And I remember we were at Formula Drift, Texas. Okay. And we pulled it up on the computer. We were all sitting around a table, the whole team, like eating dinner. And we were like, holy crap, do you see this place? It was $3.7 million at the time, which was way out of my budget. It was incredible. I mean, you drove in here, like all the buildings, the lifts, the houses, everything. It was like, we were looking at it like, can you imagine if this is something that we could one day have? And James, who worked for me at the time, he was like, I go home earlier than you from Texas. I'll go out and I'll check it out. And I think he went out with another guy that works for me, Zach, and they checked it out. And what basically wound up happening when they checked it out, the real estate agent had made either, the biggest mistake, but the best thing ever for me. He had said, hey, look, the daughters have been trying to sell this property for 7 years. They've got like no offers. Their mother's in the hospital. They're eager to sell. Like everything that you would want to hear as a buyer to lowball them. So my sister is my real estate agent. She's like gangster real estate agent in the Central Florida area. Like number one, literally sells houses to like all the basketball players and everything. So if you need a house, hit up my sister.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Stockworth Realty, ask for Julie.
Shout out to sis. Okay.
But like she's dealing mansions. So if you that's who you call if you're looking for someone with a indoor basketball court.
All right.
You know what I'm saying?
I get my pennies.
Anyway, I lured her in to help me, even though like this was way out of the realm of like what she deals with and out of her area. But she thought I was crazy because I was like, offer them 1.7 on a 3.7 house. She's like, they're gonna tell you to fuck off. Don't do it. I go, look. The worst that happens is they say no. So we offered 1.7 and they came back at 2.1, which is like already in my budget, right? I think I got approved for 2.3. So I was like, oh my God, this might actually happen. So I was like, nah, tell them 1.9. My sister's like, are you crazy? She's like, they're going to tell you to fuck off. Like, no way. Like you shouldn't do that. You should just take it. I go, Worst they say is no. And they came back at 2, and that's what I wound up getting the property for. So, I mean, up by you, $2 million will barely get you like probably a 2,000 square foot shop.
Yeah. Especially on a main street or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're cooked. But yeah, it's this. I don't even, honestly, I don't even know. I haven't seen the facility yet.
Yeah.
I don't even know what this would
shop
cost.
Should cost $2 million.
Yeah. I don't even know what your whole like property would cost in New York.
Yeah.
Like, I can't even imagine.
I mean, at the amount of concrete here would cost you $2 million just to put the concrete down.
That's wild. But you're also, one of the downsides to being here is I was on the way here and he texted me and he was like, yo, like bring some food or something because there's nothing around here.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like in the sticks, but I'm sure you would want that because, you know, you don't want to be around a lot of people and people pulling up to, I'm not sure if you have that, but.
Yeah, I mean, that was a little bit of an issue at the old shop. And like,
Yeah.
I really didn't mind it. It was just, you know, people are ignorant and they'll do like burnouts and like cause problems with,
Right.
like we looked really bad to the surrounding neighbors because of other people. So like that was really frustrating. Even when I worked out of my house, people were always doing burnouts at the stop sign. So like my neighbors get annoyed, but it wasn't us.
Right.
They were just trying to get attention from us.
Yeah.
Here, that doesn't really happen. It's not like too far off the beaten path, but I really like food is like one of the things I'm passionate about. So like not being near a lot of good restaurants drives me nuts. I really enjoy just like driving a cool car to like a nice dinner place. And we're like almost at the threshold where I don't feel like taking a car that runs on like race gas because it's so far away.
Do you guys have E85 here?
Yeah, but not really in this area. And like I just run Ignite Red in all my cars. And like most of the restaurants that we go to, it's like full tank will get me there and back. You know?
Yeah.
I shouldn't say full tank. So when I drive my car, it's like I'm going to use every horsepower I got.
No matter where you go?
If I got to make sure it's still good, right? You know, like you got to rip on it. But the problem is like most of the cars, like they might fuel starve if I do a hit on the way back. So I gotta pay attention to the gas gauge. Depending, you know, I don't put surge tanks in all my cars. So like I know every car, like, you know, maybe it fuel starves if I do a hit below quarter tank, or maybe it's an eighth of a tank.
Living life on the edge, huh?
Yeah, so I usually don't.
So when you acquired the property, going back to that, right? You had to pretty much fill the space for the most part. So did you have a budget to fill the space with?
No, I mean, we basically just used it how it came for like the first long while. I mean, the down payment for this place was like every dime I had to me at the time. And, you know, there was a lot of unforeseen repairs, whether it was like AC units were huge, getting all the AC units fixed. So we had AC. That was a big one. A lot of just like little random things that needed to be fixed. The place was in phenomenal shape, so it's not like it was that bad, but I mean, it had been vacant for 7 years. So there was a lot of like little random things that needed repairs or to be addressed or to be inspected. So definitely wasn't a big budget for, you know, fixing things up right off rip. But, you know, as we got into the place, like people were really excited and videos were doing really well. So like it gave me a little bit extra budget to play with to make the place nicer.
And how many cars did you have at that time when you moved in here?
Well, it just about filled up this shop, and there were like rows, so maybe like 15. I'd gotten to the point where like I had a couple cars stashed in my house, I had a second like storage building, and then I had my shop, and they were kind of like scattered all over. So it was the first place I could have all the cars in one place. But it was probably like somewhere around like 10 to 15.
Damn, you're buying a property for that kind of money. Were you stressed out? Was there anxiety involved in that? Because you did get it for a lower number.
Yeah.
Now you're going to a loan technically, where you have a lot of overhead and things to take care of. So, like, how are you dealing with the stress, the mental stress of purchasing a property this big?
Honestly, I don't think I was really that stressed at that time. Like it never. Maybe I was just naive and I didn't really understand a lot of like the costs that were associated. So like. I didn't know all the things that were maybe coming in the horizon, or that I'd need a full-time person to deal with maintenance, or that I would need to be spending $8,000 here and there for AC units. But I mean, it's just, things just escalate, right? Like doing maintenance on a car and something could go wrong on a car is one thing. But like when you're dealing with a big piece of property and you're dealing with buildings, like, I don't know, the repairs were definitely more expensive than I thought. Like we had to redo a septic system and it cost $20,000. The internet couldn't sustain what we needed to do. And that was like $36,000 to get fiber run out here. Like it's just the numbers were so big that there would be these just crazy unforeseen expenses, and everything's more because we're in the middle of nowhere. So people were like, 4 businesses won't even come out here. So the 5th business, whatever quote they give you, you're almost stuck because they're the only option you have.
Damn, that's true. It's a long ways out, so you have to think about things differently. So when you started having those expenses, did it change your mind? Did you kind of question if you should even do this?
No, I never questioned it. Just like, as things escalate, it's just you have to be a little bit more smart,
Yeah.
It's easy to operate a shop because your swings can only be so big. But when you realize you have a place and like you could just have 50 grand of unforeseen expenses pop up in a month, you kind of have to be a little bit more smart when it comes to budgeting or have some money tucked aside in case things go wrong. Like we had to redo all our water systems here for a while. Like we had to drive to the city every day to get water because the systems weren't working here for the well.
Wow.
So like that was a huge expense and a huge thing to undergo. But once you do it, then you're set.
Were you ever looking for like ways to make other streams of income with the place you have? A lot of people get a shop like this and they start, using it or charging people for storage and things like that. Was that something that you ever thought about doing?
Yeah, no, from day one, like I have 2 of the 3 houses here rented out.
Okay.
I have one of the lift buildings. I do car storage for a few different people in there. So like, it's being leveraged, right? And like all the businesses that are here pay rent, even if it's my own business,
So it's not just like you dishing out all your money.
Yeah.
You found ways to kind of have the property
For
pay for itself for the most part. Do you own any other real estate? I know it's not a real estate podcast, but
for sure. I have my original house still.
Okay.
It's like, it's just a really cool piece of land because it's in an HOA area with no HOA, and I got a sick garage and like skate park in the backyard. I haven't been willing to let go, but like I did just rent it out to one of my close friends. So at least it's not sitting there vacant. I was just holding on to it and I was just letting all my friends stay there when they came into town. But it was just like, I got to a point where I looked at it, I'm like, yo, I'm spending a lot on this mortgage to keep this house right now. I should probably leverage it a little more, but I don't want to Airbnb it because I have a skate park, and then if someone gets hurt or something, like
true liability. Yeah.
And I don't want to get rid of the skate park because it's my favorite thing about that house. But it worked out where like one of my friends needed a place to stay. He really valued the garage, so he's renting the place out. He's using the garage kind of as his shop, and I can still go to the skate park if I want.
That's pretty cool though. So are you gonna hold on to it or let go?
It's there, and it's like doubled from what I paid for it. So like if I ever needed, it's a really good asset to liquidate. But like I don't know, unless I need to. Like I feel like it's a good thing to hold on to.
So before we move on to the next question, I wanted to kind of ask you, for people who are let's say they run into a lot of money. Their videos are doing well like yours were, and they're about to purchase a property or something like this. Maybe not as close to this. This is kind of crazy. But they're going to purchase something and they want to move into a shop and they want to have their cars and so on. What is one of the biggest tips you can give those people who are trying to level up their game in property?
That's a good question. I don't really feel like I don't want to say I don't have enough experience to give good advice, but like all the things that I've kind of done, I've like fell into them and kind of gotten lucky, right? Like this place was a diamond in the rough. I'd say just like you really take your time because it's such an important thing. Your location, your neighbors, your landlord, like all of these things could make or break you, right? How many friends have we had that had a really shitty shop landlord that has ruined it for them because they're always getting yelled at for this or that? If you can find a space where like your landlord's chill and he doesn't care if you do some burnouts in the parking lot, there's no neighbors, like that can make a huge difference in just allowing you to like be yourself and not be stressed if you put a hole in the wall or if this happened or you did a shop burnout and now he's trying to kick you out,
Right. A lot of things in New York is like detailing shops.
Yeah.
A lot of people move into shops and then when they start washing the cars, the landlord, they didn't tell the person that they are washing cars there.
Yeah.
So once they find out, they get kicked out. So that's true what you said. Like you kind of have to like make sure you're looking at location, the people around, the neighbors, and also maybe probably double check with your landlord to make sure that you can work on cars there or you can, detail them as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can try to roll under the radar, but it just sucks when like
it's not worth it.
You spend your time and money and invest into a space and then you end up getting kicked out.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's good advice. It's solid. So you had the white Supra, right, that you gave away. That actually inspired me to get a Supra. So during COVID, there was barely any content on the Supra. I think it was you, TJ, and I think Stradman was the first one to do something with the Supra. You were drag racing it as well. You were experimenting with that. You had an incident actually where something broke on the car when you went to go launch it.
Oh yeah, I think I remember. I think maybe like and
then there was like
axle and it punctured the gas tank or something.
Yes,
maybe?
yeah.
Oh yeah, like broke a fitting. Yeah, damn, you got a better memory than I do.
Well, because I at the time there was no other Supra content.
Yeah.
So I wanted to buy the car, but I wanted the reason to buy it because I felt like that car was so ugly. So
I think it's one of the best looking new cars.
Stock, I don't think so. You think stock, it looks good?
The front could use a little bit of work.
That's the worst part of it.
The rear quarter angle is beautiful.
Beautiful, yeah. But the front, when the Supra first came out, the first thing I saw was at the front of the car, and I was like, that is not a Supra.
Yeah.
To me, it was like maybe they should like have it like a Celica or something, because it doesn't have the same kind of like body lines in the front as a Mark IV Supra. So how much of a impact did that have on your channel? Was it like a good car to do content with?
It wasn't bad. It was interesting. It's like I'd sat on the sidelines and like kind of seen people getting Supras, and it didn't really like, I don't know, I really wasn't interested in it. And I don't know what tipped me over the scale to want to get one. It might have been like the early like drag race wars that everyone was having. Like at the time it was like the rush to the nines. Yeah. I think that kind of intrigued me a little bit. I was probably talking with Jordan. He was like, yo, we can do this. We'll make it happen. And I'd actually gotten a red one before the white one.
Yeah, I do remember that, yeah.
And I don't think I ever went nines in it, but I think I went like low tens in it. But it just turned out to be one of my favorite cars. Like to this day, I still think it is the best car you can buy for the money in stock form. Like the fact that you can pick one up, they hold their value, killer gas mileage, good transmission, it's sporty, it looks good, it sounds good enough. Seriously tunable platform. Like I'm a big Supra guy, and that's why like I bought another one. I was like, I missed this car, I want another one. And then again decided to give it away kind of like once I got bored with it. But like I would, if someone gave me one, it'd be the best daily ever.
Now, do you think that BMW's heavy involvement in that is what makes you feel that way about the Supra, the Mark V?
That's a good point. You know, I had the GR Corolla, and it was definitely way less impressive than the Supra. Like still a great car, but the Supra, I do think it is. It's like you're getting a great value BMW with Toyota styling. So
True.
You know, like almost in a good way. It's like sick. They got an engine that BMW had already figured out, done some development, and is like still one of the sickest, most tunable platforms to this day. Now,
have you ever had a Mark IV be like prior to that?
Prior to that, I hadn't had one. I have one now, but it's like it's stock NA, so it's like not anything to talk about.
Okay.
But I've been a big 2J guy for a while, you know.
Right. So comparing the two, right? I haven't really spoken about this in a while either, because the 2J versus B58 thing's kind of been like, you know, it's played out now and it's already been addressed 1,000 times. But do you feel like the Mark V Supra has like a soul compared to like a Mark IV Supra when you're driving it?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I just think it's such a great all-around car, you know? And maybe, I don't know enough of like the history of the Mark IV Supra to say that that's what the Mark IV Supra was. But I think the fact that they made an attractive looking car that stands out, and it's a great handling car. I was blown away because I felt like it was never talked about. It was so focused on the drag racing stuff, and no one was really like circuit racing them in the early days.
Right.
I did a track day with one, like back to back with my GT3, and I was like, damn, this thing's really good. So like I was really impressed with that side of it. And on the daily side, it was like such a good car too. Yeah. So I don't know if that's what the Supra was when it came out, but I know when the Supra did come out, the Mark IV, like it wasn't a hugely popular car.
You know, I somebody recently told me about that, and they were saying that when that car came out, it's weird. That car wasn't really like how we look at it today. It's not what it was back then. But then I hear other people say different. Like when that car came out, it was a car that everybody wanted because the street racing scene and Fast and Furious was the thing, and then people wanted to start purchasing more. So I don't really know what side it is. Like,
it might have like a timing thing to do of like, you know, depending on what state were you in, not state, but
that's
like
true too.
Your financial state at that time,
right.
Because our economy wasn't the greatest when a lot of these like hero cars were coming out, and they were priced extremely high. So it's like, I remember back when I was really young, the NSX was so expensive for what it was.
Yeah.
It was like, who would ever spend that kind of money on a Honda? Then it went the flip side to where they got really cheap, and now of course they're expensive again.
Yeah.
But I think maybe a lot of cars were stuck kind of in that bubble where they were like, they priced themselves out of being a popular car at the time.
Yeah, that's even the new NSX kind of like the same thing. Like they priced that car way too high, and it kind of, I mean, it was a hybrid situation, but I just feel like they priced it way too high, and that's why part of the reason why they didn't come out with another 2J apparently is because it would have been priced too high, and then you lose that whole market, and then that's pretty much it. You have a failure of a car.
I mean, even the Prelude back in the day was like a really expensive car for what it was. Like 50 grand in 93 probably would have been like 100 grand today. Don't mark my words on that, but like that's my guesstimate. So it'd be like a A90 Supra being 100 grand instead of 50 grand.
Right. So then technically then what that guy was saying isn't true then.
Yeah.
GTRs were always the thing. They first came out.
It depends on what state you were in. You know, if you weren't a doctor, you were probably driving around a Civic and modifying that.
Yeah.
The doctors were the ones that were modifying Toyota Supras.
And most of the doctors were driving the NSXs also, I feel like.
Yeah.
So the Supra, you gave that car away. Now the giveaways, was it like a trend or something that you started or something that
No,
was
I definitely didn't start it. Other people were doing it.
And Tommy was doing stuff too.
It was nowhere near what it is today.
Yeah.
Like when I was giving away a car, like other people had done it, right? I wasn't the first, and like I had obviously gotten inspired by someone else. But people were like, "You're giving away a car? That's absurd!" Like there was no 80/80, there was no sweepstakes all over your Facebook page everywhere. So it was a crazy thing. Even though it was like a $8,000 car, it was crazy.
Right. And was that something that you did for, like, I'm sure it was rewarding, of course.
Yeah.
But you continue to do because it was an extra source of income, or?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a cool way to be able to make content without needing to own the car. So like in the example of the 350Z, like my 350Z had gotten pretty complicated, and I wanted to show people that you didn't need to make a super complicated drift car. It could be very simple using like very cheap, inexpensive parts.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a purpose for it.
Right.
So rather than building a car with no purpose, I was like, this is great. This can be a giveaway car. It'll help earn some extra revenue on the clothing side.
Yeah.
But I can also get to make the content and have a reason for this car. And the MK5 Supra was kind of that. I bought the car with the intention of giving it away at the time.
Okay.
So it was like, I don't think I want to own this car. I don't really know enough about it. But if I'm giving it away, I can justify the experience of getting to own it, getting to modify and go through this journey, knowing that I'm not committed to keep it, right?
Right.
And then I wound up liking it so much that I did it again because I like missed it.
Yeah. So it's a mixture of kind of like income and then, you know, feeling things out as well.
Yeah.
And then you get to kind of learn about a car while you're building it to give it away.
Yeah, and now it's kind of switched a little bit to where some of the cars that I'm giving away might be like personal cars that I've owned.
Yeah.
Or like intentionally cars that won't require a lot of work. Because what happened for a while is some of the cars that I was giving away took focus away from my racing program, which became a pretty big focus for me.
Yeah.
Or from other builds that I was really excited to do. So I think the viewers saw that, and they saw that like these giveaway cars were sucking me away from the stuff that they wanted to see, and they knew that I wanted to do. And at that point, I kind of started pivoting to more cars that were like maybe 80% of the way there already, that I can just kind of put my final touch flare on, or a car like my yellow Evo that I've had for years that people already know on the channel that doesn't really need a lot.
Right. So now doing these giveaways, right? It's a source of income, of course. It's a way to kind of, you know, make extra money additional to what you make on YouTube itself with AdSense, right? So which car would you say at that time was the most rewarding?
At what time?
Prior to purchasing the compound.
Rewarding for me? Or
Yeah, like you know, money-wise.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think around that time, like what car would have like done really well on YouTube. I feel like they all did well.
Yeah.
I don't feel like there was any single car that like really stood out or like was a huge, like, let's just say money earner for the money that I had into it. Yeah, I feel like everything was kind of on the same playing field. It was never like one car, and I could be completely wrong. Someone can go and look at my channel and I'm, you know, maybe I'm just not in tune, but you know, it's a while back. We've done a lot since then.
Yeah.
But there's not really a car that I look at and I'm just like, oh yeah, that was a car that content killed it in.
And even now to this day, there's no cars in particular that stand out the most out of any other car where you feel, well, no. What about the, well, moving on from prior to the compound, what about the GTR?
I don't think the R34 like did that well for videos. Like it certainly didn't do bad. Like, right, the first video of getting an R34 did great.
Yeah.
But I think the videos of me getting my 350Z did just as good.
Interesting.
So again, that's where I was kind of going, where it's like, as long as it's something that I'm excited about, like honestly, probably in the recent years, probably the best ROI on a car would have been that Legend car, the thing that we're trying to like push off because it's so ugly in the background. Just because I was so excited about it. It's so new and different. Like even though it's like a cheap car that anyone can go and find on Marketplace, it's just something different.
Yeah.
But like that car, like every video in the beginning was like 1 million views, and it was like $4,000. So and like I didn't do anything to it. Like I like cut the knuckles. I don't think I put a single dollar into it.
So I think technically that's the most rewarding car then, right?
Let's say biggest ROI. Because I wouldn't say rewarding. When I hear rewarding, I think of like the car that really like makes my heart whole, that it was like rewarding to work on and like I enjoyed the process, you know?
So is there that car? You don't have that car then? The rewarding and how you look at it?
My Evo, I think, would be up there. My white Evo,
Okay.
just because that's another car that was like kind of in a similar era as the white Skyline. That, like I had my hands on a lot. I was turning a lot of the wrenches. I was really involved in that build. I was driving it a lot on back roads. I was driving a lot on tracks. And
Yeah.
like that car was really rewarding. It was kind of like the Skyline. Like those are my two early R&D cars, if you want to call them, of just like experimenting and trying different things, trying different suspension things, trying different turbo and engine setups, like really learning about tuning. Like that's when I met Jamie Marsh, and like that's
Right.
when I really started understanding like a higher level of car, I guess.
Right. So what's the specs on that? Because I don't know anything about that car. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So what's
I
cool
don't
about
even,
that?
what is it called?
That's an Evo 5.
No, not the Evo 5. I'm sorry.
Oh, the Legend.
Like that's not an Evo 5.
Yeah, no. Well,
The Legend, yeah, the
the Legend. It's a 1,000cc street bike motor from.
Oh, it's a street bike motor. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what car it would technically be from, but it's super light. I think it weighs like 1,200 pounds and 11,000 RPM, sequential like street bike
wow.
transmission.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they use them for like dirt track racing, some asphalt stuff, but mainly dirt. It's just like a weird thing. It's really dangerous.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, you look at it.
It's got a cage in there though. It seems like it's got
but
some type of protection.
Look at the steering column. It's not collapsible. It'll just go right through your gut if you get crashed and your harnesses break.
I mean, okay. Well, in the safety aspect, it's probably not a good idea to kind of promote it. But I think it's pretty cool, man. You were trying to push it back, but like,
Yeah.
we could have had it in the background. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, it's just like of what I'm proud of and like what I identify as like the cars that are my brand is Pursuit of Perfection.
Right.
That thing is so far from that. That is like the ugliest car you will see at this entire compound. It's rough. I literally didn't touch a single thing on that other than just like mess with suspension to try to get it to drift.
And are you doing anything else to it to kind of to keep it going with content, or it's just sitting
I
there?
I gotta fix the carbs on it. It ran like shit the last time I tried to drive it, and I don't know, I just didn't have time.
Now, do you have you have so many cars, dude? I think when I came in here, you were like, oh, this is not it. There's like more cars, right? Do you have cars in Japan also?
Yeah, I've got a few. Right now, I've got 4, but really only 2 are anything worth talking about. I've got my STI over there. I've got a version 6. I can't remember if it's version 6 or version 5. Version 6, Type R Limited,
Okay.
which is just like, it basically be like as cool as it gets before the 22B.
Okay.
So like it's cool 2-door, like blue seats, roof flap, like sick car. I've got that over there, and then I've got my JZX 100 Cresta, which is just like my machine for Ebisu drifting, just lap. And I've got like 2 other just random piece of shit cars over there.
Are you keeping the cars at the track? I think
The JZX 100, yeah, and then the other cars are just in storage.
Okay, because I think it was Jordan. I think he had mentioned that TJ has cars there.
Yep.
I didn't even know that was a thing. So like, there's a storage at the track for your cars. Is that how it works, or?
Yeah. So at the track, it's just outdoors. You just pay like, I don't know, it's like $50 a month or whatever, and you just leave your car at the tracks and fly in twice a year and go drive it.
That's pretty cool. And are those cars allowed to be here? Like you can bring them here?
Yeah.
So
Technically, yeah, but I don't know if they're just really bad cars. You wouldn't want to bring over here.
like in what sense?
Like
bad?
they're just rough. Like you think that thing looks bad.
Also, they're not in good shape, you're saying?
No, they're like demolition derby cars.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, they're just machines.
Okay, because he mentioned there was a good amount of cars over there, so I'm like, I
yeah.
wonder why he's keeping them at the track. But
Yeah.
I didn't know if he was just like...
I mean, it's TJ, so like his is probably nice and like painted all fresh, but like my shit's rough.
So you already have, when you go to Japan, you just go there and you already have a car to jump in. You have options, basically.
Yeah, but like that's the car you drift, and it gets turned on once a year, sent to red line for 2 weeks straight, and then you turn it off and come back again.
Have you test driven any other cars that we don't have here in Japan that you were kind of impressed by?
I feel like I don't want to sound cocky, but I feel like I got a lot of those cool ones already.
So the importing process, has that been kind of like easy for you? Like when you want to buy a car when you used to want to buy one because you have everything, right?
Yeah.
When you used to want to buy a car from overseas, how was that for you? Was it kind of easy? Like were you eyeing cars, holding them over there?
I've been on all ends of the spectrum. Like I've definitely gotten unlucky and bought a car at auction that I thought was going to be really nice, and it turned out to be a pile of shit, or the paint was like not really good.
Yeah.
But like a great example is like my Mint 964 I got from Sapporo, which is like a northern island in Japan where everything there should be rusty and awful. I had someone put eyes on it. They told me that the car was clean. I didn't really know if I should trust him or not. I rolled the dice, spent a lot of money on that car. It showed up, and I was like terrified all my cars have gotten damaged in row. It's like no matter what, like one of the dudes unloading the car steps on the hood, puts a dent in it, it gets a scratch here. Like every car that showed up, I'm just like bummed for some reason. This car, I paid to have sent in a container because I was like, I'm gonna cry if this thing gets a single dent on it.
Yeah.
So it's like it was thousands more. Like I think row was like maybe a couple grand at most, probably not even. Like containers like 10 grand, I think at the time to send it over. But I was like, I don't want this car to get a single scratch on it.
Yeah.
Showed up, car was immaculate. Literally
Wow.
cleanest 964 I've ever seen. It was like the best it could possibly be.
So that was probably your best experience importing a car.
Yeah, and look, it's not a special, I shouldn't say it's not a special car. Like it's slow. It's not like there's like really anything to write home about, but just in terms of cleanliness, it's the best 964 I think I could have found.
Wow. So can you tell me a little bit about this car? Because I'm not a Porsche guy. I'm not gonna lie and sit here and act like I am.
So the 964 is interesting because it was never like a hugely desirable car. They were really cheap and no one really cared about them.
Yeah.
The values really started to skyrocket when Singer started using them for their like I don't know, even resto mods, if you want to call that what it is, because they were just buying so many of the cars that it set a new baseline for what they're worth. So like to this day, like a manual 964, you're probably not going to even find for like under 80 grand. Wow. And it's not an exciting car. Like these things, I don't even think they make 200 horsepower.
Yeah.
They're heavy. They're not light cars. It's like 3,300 pounds or something. They just look cool and it's a vibe. And I wanted one because it was actually when I got my 34, I was just like, this is cool and new and different.
Yeah.
Like I just want to experience it. Like the cars for me, it's like a learning journey.
Right.
And I wanted to have that journey. And it just had to be the right car though. And when this one popped up, I was like, okay, this is a sick color. It's automatic. So that'll give me something to do with the car.
Okay.
Because the engines on these cars like are the most expensive engines to have built. Like you don't even want to know. It's crazy.
Like, give me some numbers. I want to know now. He said it.
Yeah, like if you want like a basic rebuild, like you're probably, and I could be totally off on this, right? You're probably going to spend like at least 20 grand for a basic rebuild.
20,000 for just to restore it, like a basic rebuild.
Yeah, and then it just like amplifies and amplifies. Like you want to make 400 horsepower, you're spending 100 grand.
Nah, I'm good.
Yeah, it's the problem is, and like I don't want to get too off topic. It's just it's a dying breed of engine builders, and there's only a few that you would want to trust to build that car, and they're backlogged for years. So it's kind of like a dying art. It's just because of the split case design. Like it's not something that a normal machine shop would take on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of intricacies of it. I mean, the heads in that car alone are 20 grand. So it's it's ridiculous.
It's not a platform for the weak at all.
But it's cool and it's something different and it's something that I always wanted to do. And like, you know, it's interesting because these guys in like the 964 world, you do any sort of modifications and they're like, whoa, that's so cool. And I'm like, if I could build S13, I can build one of these. Yeah. So I took it on and that's kind of what happened. I rebuilt the engine, just like regasketed myself and wound up losing the motor to a dumb mistake. And I had to go down the rabbit hole of getting a crazy gnarly motor, but you live and you learn. So
how's the driver experience in that? Is it like comfortable? Like I know it's an older car, but like
part of the thing is like I was like I'm never going to be able to afford to change the engine or do anything engine mods on this car. So like I'm going to get an auto car so I can at least manual swap it. Yeah. Get to do something on the car and feel like I built and did something. Right. But it also saved a lot of money too. Like a manual car is like usually like 40, 50 grand more than an auto car. So that was cool. But the driving experience, I was really impressed at first. You know, it's obviously I'm used to like Nissans and like shitty like Japanese cars. So like when I drove this car, I was like, whoa, like you can do like 80 miles an hour and it doesn't feel like you're going to die. Like it's a really smooth ride. People talk about how they're like so engaging and, you know, it's so raw feeling, but I feel like maybe because I'm so used to that from all the other cars that I drive, it actually feels more like a luxury car to me. It still has some like cool intricacies of like the floor mounted pedals and the way the shifter feels and the way that it handles, but it's not as far of a departure from the stuff that I'm already used to than I thought it would be, if that makes sense.
I got you. So with this car, the parts are pretty rare, right?
You can actually get a lot of the parts still new from the dealer.
And they're just expensive, right?
It's not too bad. Like some of the stuff's pretty reasonable. It's the fact that there's so few people that do it. Like imagine if there was like 3 dudes in the country that built good K series that you could trust.
Yeah.
And then there's tons of people that want their work done with unlimited pocketbooks.
Right.
That's the Porsche world.
I'd build another car before that, but it's a beautiful looking car. The color's amazing.
Thank
It's
you.
a really nice car.
You're building an RB right now, and that's not the cheapest.
Nah,
thing
I know. But you know,
your shit's fancy too, right? Like what's going on with your RB? You're doing like a big motor, right?
3.2.
Yeah.
3.2.
That ain't cheap.
Nah, it's not.
You
But
gotta
I mean,
have at least 30 G's in that thing.
50.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
you could get a pretty sick air cooled motor for 50 G's.
Well, how fast am I going in that?
You could for 50 G's. If we're talking like naturally aspirated stuff, right? The turbo stuff's totally different.
Yeah.
Naturally aspirated, you could probably make low 300s. 50 G's.
But that car's heavy, you said. That's probably not fun to drive.
No, I mean it's fun. It's different because it's rear engine, right? But you could do like a G body and like you can get those things light, like 2,200, 2,300 pounds.
That sounds more, yeah,
make
for
low
that
300s.
for that power, yeah.
Yeah, and what's interesting is a lot of people in like the Porsche world are like, you need the 964 because it's such a better car because the suspension feels so much better. Blah 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 blah. I drove 2 G bodies and I love them. So usually people are like, oh, the G bodies suck and they don't feel good and the suspension design sucks.
Yeah.
I enjoyed them a lot. So like, I would love to build like a lightweight G body and just with a fancy race motor.
How do you feel about the RWB stuff? I know that was kind of controversial over SEMA. Like, is that something that you would ever do with one of your cars?
I've always been, I don't want to say against, but like, I've never been one to cut a clean car up. Even my S13, like it took me so long to put over fenders on that car. Even my 350Z, same thing.
Yeah.
Like, I can't take a grinder to a car with good quarter panels. Like I can't let myself do it. So the idea of doing that to a car like that is like, it's not my cup of tea. I respect it. I think they look cool.
Yeah.
I've heard they don't drive the best because, you know, you're messing with a lot of suspension geometry. But I don't like, I could never bring myself to cut that car up ever.
It's tough to look at and make that decision because of how it looks now and how clean it is.
Yeah.
I'd probably feel the same about it. However, the way they look when they're all done up is like, it's tough, man.
But you got to remember, like these cars used to be for a while, like you could get one for like teens, like 15 to 20 grand, no problem.
Yeah.
Now you're not touching a manual 964 for like under 80, 90 grand.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a different lens that you're looking at the car from now.
Right. Especially spending that kind of money because then you got to spend money on the kit and to cut it up.
I mean, a great example. Let's change it to a Mark IV Supra.
Okay.
Left-hand drive Mark IV Supra. Are you going to cut it up and put a wide body kit on it?
Absolutely.
For real though.
All right.
No, but
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Hell no, I'm not cutting that car up.
But back when it was cheap and like, you know, you could get a Mark IV Supra for like, I don't know, 15, 20 grand. It's probably not as big of a deal. But now it's like, man, just finding one with clean quarter panels alone. Now you're going to cut them. I
was never really a fan of that car with any wide body stuff.
Yeah.
That wasn't really my thing. But maybe a different car, not the Supra. I don't know. I just feel like that car does not look good wide body.
I mean, it's already kind of wide. I mean, same as that. So that's a narrow body.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a narrow body.
Right.
And you could fit a 10.5-inch wheel on a stock body.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, why would you want to, I mean, I understand why you'd want to make it wider, but like, that's a pretty wide wheel. Look at that tire, dude. That's a pretty thick tire.
You could probably put an 11 on there, no?
You'd be pushing
poking.
it. I'm a little tight.
Yeah.
You could probably do it though.
Nah,
You don't need it though.
Pretty good.
With the power you're making, trust me, you don't need it.
Yeah. No. With on that car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. No, that makes sense. Another car you have is this S15 up here,
Yeah.
right? What was the process for that, and how did the car arrive?
That was an interesting one because I'd gotten an S15 here, like a gray market car.
Yeah.
And I was planning to build that one, but that was like a great example of like I really wanted to start with the perfect car, and that other car had been painted. It was originally silver and then was painted yellow. So I was like, I don't know if that one's the one. So I wound up selling it to a buddy of mine. Got that car for about the same price and just decided I'll just wait 2 years to build this car. I'm in no rush.
Right.
So like now it's finally here and we've just been like building it really slow. Totally different than all the stuff I've built before. It's like building just like a really cush, like plush street car, but with like all the fancy race car bits too.
Yeah, that car is probably right now my favorite. I don't know. I love S15s.
Yeah.
So now when you find parts for these cars, right? How are you sourcing the parts? Because you have a ton of parts, personal parts here. Are these parts that people sent to you? Did you buy them and they just sat over the years? Like, what's your process for sourcing parts for these kind of cars?
I have some partners and like sponsors that I work with that are like huge supporters of the build. So like fabrication stuff, like every car here you're going to see has vibrant,
I noticed that.
like literally vibrant titanium, vibrant aluminum, vibrant stainless. Pretty much every car's got a Link ECU. I work with wiring specialties a lot.
Okay.
I'd say that the big thing, D-Works fuel injectors, but I'd say the big thing is like, I've always kind of drawn a line with the car builds where most of the stuff I'm getting because I want it and I'm not getting what will be given to me for free.
Okay.
So I have the support of a lot of great partners, but like say like body kits or wheels or certain things that are really important to like the ethos of the car to me.
Yeah.
Where a lot of creators in the early days would be just taking the stuff that was free or that was easy to get. I'd be going out of my way to maybe find something that was a little bit more rare or a little bit harder to find. And like Tommy was a huge kind of inspiration in that, because I love the story of, finding that little gem that you found in Japan, had to wait to import it over, or search marketplace for months to find this one part. And like all those little details, I feel like are what make the car so special.
So with all the car builds that you have to obviously source parts, which you have your process for that, right? Can you talk about a challenge that you faced that the fans maybe didn't see when you were building a project?
Yeah, I'd say sometimes the biggest challenge is like, when you have a business that revolves around everything that you do, and like there are a lot of things trickle down from the YouTube side. When you run into a hiccup on a build, it amplifies because now you don't have the video done and you don't want to upload the video without getting to that next milestone. Maybe it's like you were counting on that first start video, but something happened and it's probably not going to happen for 3 to 4 days now, because now you're not going to get the parts and you got to wait for this, or you're missing that one fitting.
Right.
I'm hugely fortunate after acquiring Drift HQ and having that 2 doors down. 99% of the things I could ever need building a car, or random fittings between the shelves and the inventory we have, and then also like the trailer that we bring as like trackside support.
Right.
We can probably find something to make it work. So like that's a huge advantage that I have in being able to finish cars and keep them on deadlines, and the amazing talent here too. But like I'd say that's a big one, is just, sometimes people might be annoyed at a video because, it didn't seem like a lot got done.
Yeah.
But they might not see that like FedEx didn't show up on time that day, or a part got lost in the mail. And it kind of like throws a wrench in your day, and you got to figure out, okay, how can I still tell the story and make a great video for people without doing what I intended to do?
Right.
Oh, I got another good one for you.
What's up?
When you work with someone, like let's say it's a shop, right? I don't work with shops a lot, so this isn't something I really do, but I've seen a lot of people have this experience. They hook you up, right? It's a sponsored thing, or they're giving you a deal, and then something goes terribly wrong.
Okay.
And now you're in a position where you can't make a video because you don't want to throw the people that are hooking you up
under the bus.
Yeah. But at the same time, now all your content you can't make, you can't post, because it'll make them look bad.
Right.
And you have two options. Either you're in it for the long run, you don't make the video and you take an L, or you care about yourself, you post it, and then now you look like a giant asshole and you run someone's business into the ground because they messed up when it probably was just an easy mistake. So like that's, I guess, one word of advice I can have that I see like a lot of, let's just say like new YouTube people or new influencers, content creators, they're so quick to throw people under the bus. Think about the impact that you could have. Maybe the shop that worked on your car, maybe something happened and it was a mistake, or maybe one of their employees was having a bad day.
Yeah.
You have the power to run their business into the ground, and those people's families won't have food on the table. So like you have a responsibility as a creator to think like, what is the implications if you say in your video that this car blew up because of someone's negligence?
Yeah.
What can happen? Because I think that's a big problem with people with this like selfish me mindset, where they won't take an L and they'll make someone else take it because they're more worried about their video.
I've seen that a lot of times. Yeah. And it still happens to this day. Some small influencers and then some of the biggest influencers as well. I think about the same thing when I see that kind of stuff, because you never know. Sometimes some people can get sick. You never know what's going on, and shit happens. So you don't really have too much content, more so now. I think I just see ride-alongs with it. But one of my favorite swaps or cars you have is the Barra swap, the GT500.
Yeah, I think so.
Right. So that motor is not obviously, it's not in the States, right? So how do you source parts for a Ford Barra?
I think like this you can kind of apply to everything. I love being a sponge and just soaking up knowledge. So like whenever I'm taking on something new, I find someone that knows a lot about it.
Okay.
And I just soak up everything that I can. And like, it's tough because it's been a while since I went down that road, but I remember two businesses that were like really helpful to me in that process was a guy or a company. I don't know if it's his name or his company, by the name of Maculek. He makes like a lot of little trick bits for the Barra, and he helped me a lot with like questions. He helped me a lot. Golby's, which is like a parts distributor in Australia that does a lot of Barra stuff, helped me a lot with picking certain parts. And then Scott Tuning Fork over at Haltech. He kind of helped guide me in a lot of different ways. So I'd say between all of them and just like a little just like common sense knowledge, and there might be someone I'm forgetting, and if so, like I apologize, but I just listen. There's, it's the same thing when I was talking about the RB. I had Kevin Lawrence. He was helping me make the right decisions. I don't ever think that I know more than someone that specializes in something.
Right.
Same thing with the Porsche stuff. Like I'm friends with a lot of Porsche people. I said, tell me what to do because you've made all the mistakes and you've figured it out. Help me skip that.
Right. Now that motor is they say it's kind of similar to a 2J, but it's extremely heavy. Yeah. And it's a very strong motor.
Very tall.
Very tall motor as well, which is probably why you don't really see that here in a lot of swaps. Also because fitting it in a car is a tedious task, right? So what are some of the advantages of running that as opposed to maybe, let's say, a 2J? I mean, it's a GT500 chassis, but I think that's probably something that's kind of similar.
I'd say the biggest thing is just the torque. Those engines make a ton of torque. It's a 4-liter, right? Okay. So like that's a lot of displacement. There's no replacement for displacement.
Right.
I'd say one of the biggest challenges of it that I had in the beginning was I wasn't a sponge as it applied to the transmission setup that I chose, and I was kind of like an early adopter of trying to use a transmission controller on an automatic transmission. Had a lot of issues with that. Went to a manual thing and tried to get a place in the US to make me a clutch for this engine that hadn't made a clutch for it before, instead of just buying something from Australia that was tried and true. And I wound up running into a lot of issues with the harmonics. That engine has awful harmonics and it will just vibrate everything loose. Now, it's a commonly known thing where most of the clutch kits in Australia are made so that you have room to use a locking plate that basically locks the flywheel bolts so they don't vibrate loose. The clutch that I had, I couldn't run one because the clearances were too tight, so I couldn't run ARP hardware that was tall enough to use the locking plate. So we wound up literally welding the bolts to the flywheel to get them to stop getting loose and backing out.
Also, it was on the flywheel side. It wasn't on the front side of the motor.
Correct. And fast forward, I just wound up getting a clutch that probably Golby's recommended to me, and haven't had an issue since. It's been working great. Now I got the locking plate. It's sick. So, and that car makes how much power? It's like 1,200.
1,200. So 1,200 in that car.
And like 1,000 foot-pounds of torque.
1,000 foot-pounds of torque. So comparing it to a 2J, how do you think it feels? Because you've had 2Js in different chassis, but the power, the way it comes on, is obviously it's going to be easier to make power. But are there any similarities between the two that you feel when you're driving them?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say, like, again, the torque is everything, right? People are so focused on a power number. The power under the curve is the torque, right? And that is what will really transform a street car. That thing punches way out of its weight class for 1,200 horsepower because it's like the torque is so ridiculous and it's making power for so long that it's a lot faster, right? Like I have other cars that make similar power, but because they're a little bit more dead in the mid-range, you're not pulling as hard for as long.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to put into words, but if you've driven, like you kind of know the torque, it hits different.
Yeah. Do you have any future plans for that? Or it is what it is?
It's a great car. Like I'll go and I'll drive it. I don't know, a couple times a month. I'll have a friend. I'll want to give him a ride in it. It's really heavy, so it's not like a great drag racing car. It's like a decent roll racing car, but again, it's really heavy. It's just a fun car to drive. It makes cool noises. It's really, really fast. Like it feels like it almost does wheelies on the street. I do like a first gear hit once there's some heat in the tires, and the thing feels like the front end wants to lift up.
You're
like
some
good
focused.
Traction.
You're super focused when you're doing ride-alongs with that. It seems like it's a lot.
That's one of the few cars that I have that like still gets the adrenaline going, just because there's so much going on, and like it's a Mustang, so it always could do Mustang things.
Yeah,
you always kind of got to be on your edge because it might just randomly do some weird shit sometimes.
That's true. True.
So it definitely gets adrenaline going, but like you start to get in that territory, and the cars are just so fast. It's hard to really enjoy them without just being really dangerous,
Right.
right? Like you'll never see me doing pulls next to other cars. You'll never see me on the highway flying by other cars.
Yeah.
Like, I'll find a road that's wide open with no speed limit, of course.
Yeah.
To be able to enjoy them. And like with that car, like before you know it, you're doing way too fast, you know?
Right. So that's a 4.0, right?
Yeah.
Now you have your drift car,
Yeah.
right? The interesting thing about that is it's 2J, right?
Yep.
Now it's a 3.4.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the like reasons why you chose to go with a 3.4 as opposed to maybe like a 3.0, especially for drifting since you're on the rev limiter most of the time?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I was just always concerned with the response, and I always ran turbos that were way too small for the engine that I was using. So I was like, I just want as much power as soon as I can have it. It'll just give me a better competitive edge.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what it was. You know, now fast forward, it's, I guess, still kind of the same thing. But you know, with a 3.4, you can make more power sooner. You're not having to run as much boost to make the same numbers. And I've had really great luck with it. You know, there's a lot of people in the early days of drifting that were pointing fingers and blaming the 3.4 for a lot of mistakes that were other issues in their engine. But, you know, we've had probably the most reliable engine program at arguably one of the highest horsepower JZs of last year. You know, we made 1,200 horsepower. I want to say like high 900s for torque. And like literally the only issue we had all season was just some premature wear just from having a really hard cam and a soft bucket, but like no failure. We just replaced it because it was a wear item.
Who makes the so it's a 3.4, but who makes the kit?
It's a BC kit.
BC.
Yeah. So I run the BC lightweight cranks.
Okay. And you haven't had any issues at all. You're on the rev limiter. You're obviously, you know.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people say not to rev them that high. And I want to say like, I think this year I told you 8,200 when we were talking before, but I want to say I might have even been revving it to 8,500 towards like some of the later rounds.
Yeah.
And it takes it.
And if you were doing if you were like, let's say a 3.0, you'd be revving it higher or?
Yeah, you could rev it higher. I think the most important thing that people overlook is torque. Sometimes people are like, I want to build an LS that revs to 10,000 RPM. I go, okay, are you cool that it's probably only going to make 350 foot-pounds of torque?
Yeah.
And for drifting, like we need to be able to flash through the grip to be able to get the wheel speed up. And if you don't make enough torque, it doesn't really matter what your horsepower number is. You won't be able to do what you need to do.
Right.
It's like the rule of thumb is kind of like you want like if you can have a 4,000 RPM power band, that's sick.
4,000 RPM. Yeah. Because it's responsive. Yeah.
Make at least, let's just say within 20% of your peak torque for 4,000 RPM. That's amazing. Now you can control your wheel speed. You can get the car wherever you need to be at maximum levels of grip. Because you know, I don't know how involved in the drifting world you are, but like
me, not at all. Not at all. I'm just a host.
You know enough to.
When it comes to cars, yeah, and understanding how like the mechanics of it, yes. But I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like I've driven a
No, but like there's a lot of people I'll talk to, and maybe not as much today as a couple of years ago, but a lot of people in drag racing used to look at it like, oh, darn, you're just running the loosest tires you can just to keep it sideways. Professional drifting at its stage right now, it's really like drag racing sideways. I mean, we have cars that are pulling up a wheel in the corners. We are loading up an engine that makes 1,000 foot-pounds of torque to where it can't hit rev limiter because it has so much grip.
Right. So it's changed. And I think I mentioned that also is that I did an interview with DK, legend, Keiichi Tsuchiya, and he mentioned a few things. One of the things was the judging with FD and how he doesn't understand it, and also how it's basically like a smoke show, right? Because the cars they raced with back then or drifted with back then were like A86.
Yep.
So they didn't have the power to to smoke the tires, I guess, in drifting. So it was more a motorsports kind of feel when drifting. So how do you feel about how it's kind of transitioned to more of a, I don't want to say smoke show to be disrespectful or anything, but like how it's more of like a show rather than art?
I mean, I would say it's still art. It's a progression of the sport. It'd be like if you compared today's day and age of all motor Honda racing to like years and years ago when maybe the average was like 300 and change, and now people are making 600, 700 horsepower plus. Should the people that were like, oh, back in my day, the racing was really about like your driving talent because you couldn't make all this horsepower and all this stuff. It's just the evolution of the sport. Yeah. It's the same thing with anything else. Mark IV Supras back in the day, I'm sure there was a time when like people were racing 500 horsepower Mark IV Supras.
Yeah.
Now they're making 2,000, 3,000. should the person that's driving, and like this is no disrespect to DK at all, but
No, people were really upset about it. So I just wanted to hear your take on it. I'm not.
Yeah, it's just two different things. Like I respect and I love driving a low horsepower car, like super inspired by him, his wheel work. Like I got a set of his gloves and I'll drive like my K20 S13 is to chase that like original feeling of having to drive the balls off the wall in a low power car and really just hone in on your skill as a driver. But like Formula Drift to me is like the highest level of drag racing where you're looking for that tenth of a second by having some advantage in a suspension thing that the other team doesn't have. You're trying to unlock that little bit of extra horsepower to give yourself a competitive edge, to get your tune just a little bit that much better. It's really turned into more of like a professional racing type thing than an art, I guess.
And one of the things that he, like I said, he also mentioned was the judging.
Yeah.
Right? And I know it's been spoken about a couple of times. It's one of the most controversial things when it comes to FD. But do you think that with how difficult it is to kind of judge FD, do you think that drifting will have a future or with growth? Because drag racing, it's anybody can watch it and understand how it works.
Yeah.
First one down the track, or if you don't red light, of course. First one down the track who makes it is obviously the winner. With drifting, you don't really know when you're watching it. So
yeah, I mean, I'll say, look, like, you know, I own Drift HQ. I see all the orders going out every day. Like drifting is growing so fucking fast. It's unbelievable.
Okay.
Like it is so cool to see how much momentum the sport has right now. It's not going anywhere. Like it is just, it's going up big time. But I think the biggest problem that FD has, and they've done a lot better job at this in recent years, is that the judging has gotten so technical, but they're trying to appeal to a broader audience with the sport. So the calls and the judging decisions don't seem in line with what people are seeing. So it causes a lot of frustration.
Okay.
Now, a lot of the intricacies in the judging actually come from the drivers' meetings and the drivers expressing all of these things that happen on a micro level that can affect you. But the problem is, when you get into like that fine of detail, it then makes it harder to explain to the general public.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a happy medium of this. And it's a toss up, right? Like I love Drift Masters, and I think Drift Masters, a lot of their judging decisions are more based from the viewer's eyes rather than on what the driver might think or feel with all these like nuances. Like they don't even have, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they don't even have 5-minute calls. So like if your car is messed up, you're done, you're over. FD has 5-minute calls, and like you lose some of the audience there because now they're getting a shot to fix their car and stuff like that.
Right.
And I could be completely wrong, but I swear they don't have 5-minute calls. I might look like an idiot saying that. But it's just one of those things, right? Like, you know, it can cause some frustration, but you know, those dudes have the hardest job. I would much rather drive any day than be a judge. I think the hardest thing is that for a while there were judges, and you know, there's been new judges coming in and out, but there were judges that have like never been in a drift car in their life, especially at the level that we are. Like, if your only experience of drifting is like riding around a 200 horsepower car and you're trying to judge 1,000 horsepower cars with like all of these things that are happening so fast, like sit passenger seat in one of our cars and understand what's actually going before you make a bullshit call. I don't think it's like that right now, but I think that's where a lot of the frustration came from was things like that in situations where there was someone making a call or a decision that's like, on what planet does that make sense?
Right. And you've been there. You've had some, I think you posted about it, that you were upset with one of the situations and how it happened in one of the events you did.
Yeah. And it's not even like, that wasn't even what I'm saying now. That was just more like a frustration and inconsistency amongst judging decisions.
Okay.
Again, like it's a hard thing, but like, you know, with that event in particular, there was a couple polarizing judging decisions that were on both ends of the spectrum.
Right.
So it's like, if you're going to do something, at least stick to it. Right.
Okay. Not be influenced by something else. Is that what it was?
I wouldn't even say they're influenced by something else. It's just like, it gets frustrating when you see a judge call go one way and then you think it's going to go another way and then it goes another way.
Right. So now, one of the things that I noticed, maybe like a year ago or so, there's people in the comments. I think it was on a post of you at an event, and a lot of people were criticizing you because they were saying like, you're just an influencer who had a shot basically, and now you're in drifting, right? So did it ever affect you? Some of those comments that people were saying about, you know, how you entered the drifting scene?
I mean, not really. I mean, what I would say is like, I'm pouring my time, my energy, a lot of fucking money into this because I love it. I could have way more money in the bank and be like living in some nice area, like, I don't know, doing hoity-toity stuff. If I just did influencer stuff and I went and bought supercars and traded them in for another supercar, like, I don't want people to think I'm targeting or disrespecting anyone, because that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But like the dudes in racing, like the actual drivers, they respect the fuck out of me, because like I'm coming in, all of them are getting their checks cashed by sponsors and all this. I'm coming in self-funded.
Yeah.
I'm spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars because I love this shit and I want to push myself to have this goal of being a better driver. So like the comments didn't really bother me, because it's like, yo, like I could be doing way other stuff that's way more profitable, but I'm just doing this because I love it.
And it never, so none of that stuff ever has affected you. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the comments, but like when you're scrolling through them, it doesn't, hit you any type of way.
I think the only thing, I wouldn't even say that has any merit, but like in the beginning that was a little frustrating, was like people would say, oh, well, he just bought his way into FD. He just bought his way in.
Yeah.
Now, it is true that I petitioned my way into Pro Spec, which was called Pro 2 at the time. So basically there's two ways to get into FD. You can petition in, which is basically you write almost like an appeal, and you say, hey, look, here's my credibility as a driver. These are competitions that I've won. Here's some videos of me driving. Here's why I think that I belong to compete in the series. Or you can win your license in a Pro-Am.
Okay.
At the time, I lived in a region that had no Pro-Am. So if you lived in a region with no Pro-Am, it was a very normal thing to petition in.
Right.
When I petitioned in, it was a big deal because there were so many eyes on me that no one knew that like half of the drivers petition in.
Right.
Even still to this day, there's a lot of drivers that petition in that don't win competitions to get in. It's just because of the fact that I was a big name that people were like, oh, well, he bought his way in. I won my license to compete in Pro 1, competing in Pro Spec, or it would have been Pro 2, because at the time it was like if you finished, I think, in top 10 in points, you could move up to Pro 1 if you wanted to. Which I did. I think I was like 7th in points or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So do you with drifting, as opposed to like, let's say drag racing, it seems like you're on the rev limiter most of the time and it's very intense, and you probably can't see there's so much smoke. Honestly, I don't even know how you guys see through some of that stuff, right? Would you say that between the two, drifting is more like, it gets your nerves going more?
I don't know if I'd say it gets your nerves going more.
You know how you get the shakes after you drive?
Yeah, honestly, it depends, right? Like I don't drag race a lot. For me, drag racing is like there's so much going on in such a short period of time.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's more of the shakes, but like, I don't know. I think it just depends.
Not in a bad way.
Anything like, look, if I drag race as much as I drifted, I'd probably wouldn't get shakes or anything. Like, you know what I mean? If I was drag racing and I did drifting once or twice, I'd get the shakes. Yeah. It's just different, right? Like whatever you're used to, you just get used to.
And you're used to obviously drifting now, but have you ever been in this situation recently where you kind of like, maybe you got a little nervous because you're flying like into these turns? So it is kind of intense. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say I don't get nervous anymore, but I just like, I've unlocked something in like the past 2 years where mentally I can just like, I think in any professional racing, the hardest skill is to be able to go out your first lap and put down a heater, whether it's drifting, whether it's drag racing, whether it's circuit racing. And I've unlocked something where like I can go outside right now and hop in any car and I'll go lay down the gnarliest heater, like zero warm up. But it's like, it's almost just like an ignorance thing to a certain point. Because if you think about everything that can go wrong, you're probably going to make a mistake. But if you go out there and you tell yourself like, I'm the baddest dude out there, I'm going to lay down a heater first lap out, you probably will. But like for me, that was like the biggest challenge that I had in drifting for a while, because I was 50th try Adam. I would never go lay down a heater first try in BMX. I would never do my hardest trick first try. I'd work my way up to it. And in professional drifting, we may only get 8 laps of practice before competition. And if you spend 8 laps working up to get to where you need to be, you're going to be pretty behind everyone else. Where if you on your first lap can throw down a heater and then use those 8 laps to refine it, you're going to be in a way better spot. So I think unlocking that ability to be able to just mentally get in the zone right away has been like a huge benefit of being able to leverage practice more and be in a better spot by the time you get to competition. Yeah, I noticed that with a lot of people, people I know personally. Yeah, they're more grassroots drifting stuff, but they're awesome. You know, when they go out and practice, but then when they actually have to go like up for their pass, it's like they do the dumbest shit. And it's common. It's common. You get your nerves working. So that's why I was asking, like, maybe how do you deal with that? But if you don't even, it's the mindset more so.
Well, I think another thing that's not mislooked, but like overlooked sometimes is, especially in like professional drifting and like higher level stuff, there's a huge dynamic track change based on weather, based on daytime versus nighttime, based on the amount of rubber that's laid down on the track.
True.
So it's not only being able to go out there and do a good lap, you need to know how to adjust your car setup and your driving to suit what you're doing.
Right.
So like our setups vary quite a bit from the beginning to the end of a competition. You might be adding grip as you get to the end, or it might be cooling off so the track is hooking up more, so you're needing to add tire pressure so that way you still have enough power to do what you got to do.
Right. So there's other factors that people maybe not even be thinking about, and when the car reacts a certain way, they probably freak out a little bit. Or
I wouldn't even say freak
react.
out. It's just like, you know, when you haven't experienced that before and you're killing it in practice, and you go out to compete at a completely different time of day, which is very common in Formula Drift. You'll practice during the day and your competition starts at night. You'll go out to do the same lap and you'll be like, I can't even stay in drift.
Right.
And it's just an experience thing. It's not nerves. It's just the car setup was wrong.
So you mentioned sponsors, other people having sponsors and such. You are self-funded, right? Primarily, you have.
I mean, I work with a lot of great partners. So
right,
like,
but I'm saying when you enter drifting. Like,
sure, yeah.
So now you work with great partners, which is leading into my next point.
Yeah.
Now, one of the challenges that creators face or automotive influencers face is how to reach out to sponsors. And it's hard to say and ask you because you probably have a lot of the sponsors you have now because of the following and who you are, right? But is your approach the same with these companies when you reach out to sponsors, or it's different?
I'm really, really bad at it.
Okay.
Like, to the point where like I've always sold myself so short because I don't know, I just never want to be that guy like asking for stuff.
Yeah.
To the point where like I've been pushing myself more at it. You know, Duarte, my business partner at Drift HQ, and Colette, my girlfriend, both of them have been on my case like, yo, you got to just talk to these companies. You just got to like have a conversation with them. And a lot of companies that I have a conversation with are like, oh, we never thought like you'd, I'm trying to think of how they can say it. Well, I don't want to say it in a cocky way, but they're almost like, we never would have thought like you'd want to work with us. But in my head, I'm just like, I'm thinking the same thing. It's almost like I'm like a teenager dating and I'm like scared. I'm like, ooh, she's never going to like me. And she's like, ooh, he's never like, so I guess part of it is like, shoot your shot, right? But like the biggest thing would be the long-term game, right? Like you and I know the automotive community is so small and tight knit, and like whoever you're working with at one company is probably going to go through 3 or 4 companies in the lifetime of their career. Yeah. So you make a bad name for yourself with one company, you're kind of screwing yourself.
Right.
So like, I'm really proud that like this year is 10 years of me working with BC Racing.
Wow.
So like, I literally like, I was in college, my first year of college, I was a BMX rider. I wasn't even doing anything in cars. And I sent a long sponsorship proposal of why they should give me a set of coilovers. And like that started everything that you see now.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you ever sent out recently more so a proposal for anything or?
Yeah, proposals, but I wouldn't say like I'm just like cold calling proposals. A lot of times it'll be like a company that I know from someone else, or maybe I get like a formal intro, or I will never ask for something until I like at least have a foot in the door. Like,
right.
You know, get to know someone, and like it's really got to be a company or a product that's like really in line with what we do.
That makes sense. So you want to stay true, so it's not so salesy, I guess.
Yeah. But
you still promote things in your videos now, which
no, for sure. I mean, like straight up, like Heatwave is a good example. Like that's one of the few partnerships that I kind of cold called Heatwave, and I was just like, yo, I'm seeing everything that you guys are doing. Like, I think the brand is cool as fuck. I love what you're doing from a marketing angle. I like, if I'm going to have a partner in the sunglasses world, I want it to be you guys. I don't know if this is something you'd be down to do, but like, let's talk. So like that was a cold call, and that's turned out to be like again, another long-standing partner that's a huge supporter of everything that I do. I'd say a big thing is just like, I don't want to say make a name for yourself, but like, again, just like be a good person, right? Because a word of mouth is going to go way farther. Like, let's say there's a company and you want to reach out for something. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you got a bajillion followers, if you got all the metrics that should make them say yes. If there's someone that works at that company that can give a good recommendation for you, or if like they can phone a friend, or someone is like, yo, this dude's a good dude, that will go farther. I think like the car community, especially the performance side, is so much more relationship based than metric based, even to this day.
Well, one of the biggest things is actually going out to shows also. People think that a lot of these companies are going to work with you through Instagram, and a lot of them just want to meet you face to face if they're going to give you a $4,000, you know, maybe turbo or something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's important to kind of go out there and shake hands with people and kind of, you know, have them see your face and know who you are rather than just reach out on Instagram and kind of see how you're going to get parts.
Yeah, and I guess too, put yourself in the company's shoes. Like, don't go asking for a bunch of stuff and like with nothing to offer.
Right.
How is that company going to see their ROI? If you want to land a deal, figure out the questions that they're going to ask and be able to answer them for them.
Right.
Why should they give you something?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you're actually going to sell their parts, or is your audience going to be not the customer for what they're selling?
Yeah.
That's really important. If your audience is their target market, you probably got a winner. But otherwise, maybe you're shooting your shot in the wrong place.
Good advice. So with the variety of cars that you have, right, and your drifting background now, are you able to jump in any car you have here and kind of just drift, or are they set up for different things? Of course they are, but like, can you drift any one of these cars with the way they are set up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like pretty in tune with my car, so we could probably take any car in here and I could throw down a solid lap first go. And I like to think I could probably do the same in cars that aren't mine as well. But I would need to like do like a baseline setup on them. When I say that, it's just like, just make sure that like the tire pressure is decent.
Yeah.
And it has a decent alignment on it. Because I think one of the things in drifting, like, and this could kind of be like a recommendation to someone that's just getting into drifting, two most overlooked things on people's first track day is, do you know what your toe is? And do you know what your tire pressure is?
Nope. Don't know both of those.
Yeah, but like people will go and they'll struggle all day and not realize it's because their front was towed in, so it was over centering or doing some weird stuff, or their rear was towed out and it was making them spin out.
Yeah.
Or they were just running tire pressures that were just wonky. So it's like, if you gave me a car to drift, that's say a rear wheel drive car, as long as I could throw a set of toe plates on it and check tire pressure, I could do a pretty solid lap in it.
Where should your tire pressure be for drifting? I think you mentioned it before, but you didn't really say what it should be.
What do you think? What do you think we run in the rear and what do you think we run in the front?
For drifting. So if you want to slide, I'm assuming you'd run a higher pressure?
Do we want to slide though? See, this is the misconception. So like we're running like, you know, in FD we're regulated to a 200 treadwear tire. Like as an example, in Europe, there's no tire regulation. We're running a 100 treadwear tire that's like stickier than an R888. I'm sure you know what an R888 is.
Yeah.
We're running them with as much grip as we can get. Now over there, we can't even make enough power to activate the tires, but like here we're running like 7-8 pounds of tire pressure just to get the maximum grip that we can out of the rear.
Oh wow. I did not. Those
literally as low as we can go without debeating.
What?
Yeah. Now hear this. Depending on what you can do with the front tire, most of my cars I run 60 PSI or more in the front. It's backwards compared to what you would think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because I thought it'd be opposite. But
so the front is more of a preference thing. Like the rear is pretty much tried and true. Like most people are running very low pressures to get the maximum out of their tire if they're tire limited. But the front is just kind of a preference thing. I like my front to slide around and not to drive around the front. I drive off the rear of the car and I let the front slide around and kind of do whatever it can. And it also hides mistakes. So if you make like any steering mistakes when your front doesn't have a lot of grip, but if you fuck up and it's very easy to understeer and crash.
And what about like angle kits? Is that really something that's a requirement if for a first drift car? Maybe you don't have the money to purchase one. Is that really like a big deal? Do you
definitely
need that?
Definitely not a requirement, but there's like little trick things that you can do to get a little bit more angle that will help you. And it's more of like a savior if you fuck up.
Okay.
Certainly having stock angle, you're limited to doing certain things like, but a lower power car, you don't really need it. But sometimes like depending on the chassis, you can get tie rods that have built-in, almost like laid down inserts that will allow your steering rack to travel a little farther, or they sell spacers that slip on there, modified knuckles or little adapters for 350Zs, like what GK Tech makes that just bolt on and give you a little bit more angle. That's like the sweet spot for a first drift car. The full angle kits, what a lot of people don't realize is if you don't know what you're doing, you can actually make the car drive way worse by setting it up wrong.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Where like a cut knuckle car, like a slightly modified tie rod, it's way harder to set the car up badly.
Is tire width or wheel width any factor with this as well?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Depending on the tire size, will change the wheel size that you want. In competitive drifting, we'll usually run a narrower wheel just for weight reasons. And again, debeating. If you're running a super wide wheel, there's a good chance of it debeating. But if we're talking about like the style stuff, like I'd say the most common drift tire is probably like a 265 in the rear on like a 9.5 or a 10.5. I would say 9.5 to 10.5 is probably the average. 9.5 would be more if you're chasing grip and competition, and a 10.5 would be a little bit more styly, a little more stretch. You can get a little better fitment that way.
Yeah. And then you run a low tire pressure still on that.
Yep.
Never knew that.
Yeah, I mean, if we weren't doing a podcast at 11 p.m., I'd give you a ride and take you around and show you what it feels like.
Nah, it's cool.
You'll have an excuse to come back.
Yeah, it's cool. So now, one of the things I was always curious about is with influencers at your level in the automotive space, right? People think that you guys have unlimited amount of cash on your hands. Is it something that people who are at your level normally do? They buy cars and finance them, or they buy them with cash?
I think it depends, right? Like, I don't think a lot of the cars that I have you could finance. I don't know if you can go and like finance like a JDM imported car, but I do know like, is that what he does?
Yeah. So
that's funny.
I had an episode with my guy Dre, and we had a viral clip that blew up because people were talking about 15-year loans. And
Got it.
That's an option for like if you want to buy a Skyline or your dream car.
Yeah.
That's why he's laughing.
That's funny. No, it's interesting because in the early days, like I was scared of credit cards to the point where like I had a hard time buying my first house because I had no credit because like my dad was anti-credit cards. So like I was always like, if I don't have it in the bank and I can't pay for it with my debit card, don't buy it.
Yeah.
So I had no credit to my name for a while. And I'd say like that held true for like most of my purchases until I realized that building credit was important.
Right.
So like there's a few things that like I'll put I shouldn't say huge, but a hefty down payment on, and then I'll finance. So like I don't even care. Like a couple of things that I finance right now would be like obviously house, compound, have mortgages. My truck has like a portion of it financed.
Yeah.
My GT3 has a portion of it financed. And a lot of that is just from learning too. Like I'm better to leverage my money elsewhere. If I can get a good interest rate and I can finance part of a brand new truck or finance part of a Porsche with a really good interest rate, and my money can make 4 times that interest rate elsewhere.
Yeah.
Makes more sense.
One of the things that most people are probably most curious about is how much YouTubers or influencers make, right? Now, I'm not going to sit here and pocket watch you and ask you how much you make a month, right? But out of your whole career, YouTube, right? What was your biggest month, money-wise?
Ooh, that's a good question. I want to say the most money that I've ever made in a month off YouTube was probably like 80 to 90 grand.
And that's just off of AdSense.
Yeah, that was just AdSense. And that probably would have been like, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. It might have actually been when I got the compound because those videos were like all popping. It was brand new. It was exciting. It was long form content. But it's weird. I've had such slow and steady growth for such a long time that I like rarely would have those massive like peaks and valleys, which is kind of been a strong point for me.
Yeah.
But also like, it's interesting because, you know, the YouTube world is actually like, it's way more profitable if you are maybe at the 50 grand mark, which is still a crazy amount of money.
Yeah.
With way less overhead, right? Like, cause it's one of those things where like, it's not necessarily you throw more people, throw more cars, throw more things at it, you're making more money. You're probably going to make more money if you can have one car, you're the only one that works on it, you only have a house, you don't have a shop.
Yeah.
And then all that money is just being put in your bank rather than spending it.
So around that like 50,000 is where you feel.
I wouldn't even say that. I would just say it's like, you know, there's a really good chance that there are people out there that have 100,000 subscribers that are making way more than people with 1 million subscribers.
Really?
Yeah.
In the automotive space or just in general?
I think in general. Because the thing is, once you get to that level, now you're hiring people, you've got new costs, you've got new headaches, you've got buildings, you've got overhead. The swings hit you much harder, where when you're running lean, like you can kind of just be a machine. I mean, I definitely profited way more at the end of the year when my operations was smaller.
I never actually thought about it that way. So I'm like thinking about it like, damn, that's actually true.
But it's what's your end goal, right? Like my end goal of what I do isn't to have a bunch of money in the bank at the end of the year. It's to chase building these cars. It's to go compete professionally across the world. So like if I can do that and I can support that, I would rather be able to do that and look back at the end of the year, look at all the cool shit that I did instead of like, oh, look, I've got this in the bank.
Now, are you treating pretty much every year like it's your first year in business, you know, when you're reinvesting into your business? Are you still kind of doing that now? Like even at the level you're at?
Can you elaborate?
Like normally, like for example, myself, right? I'm self-funded. I don't have sponsors, but everything I make, I'm putting back into traveling and going to speak to people, car shows. I'm not really seeing much of, I'm not able to kind of be at the level where I'm like throwing 50K into the bank. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So at this level right now that you're at, you have a lot of overhead, but are you taking most of it and throwing it into back into the business, or are you kind of like enjoying your money a little bit?
It's tough, right? Because like putting money into my business is enjoying it for me. That's the beauty of what I've created is that like being able to go race with my team, that's also my friends, being able to build all these cars is what I would be doing if it wasn't the business. Like it's what I love. So like in one sense, you could look at it as like, oh, he's enjoying his money, or you could look at it like, oh, he's just investing back in himself. Because in the end of the day, like that's kind of what the platform's all about. It's investing in yourself and being able to share that journey with everyone and bring them along for the ride. So, you know, would it probably be smarter for me to buy real estate than to be buying shitbox JDM cars that are inevitably going to get double their price put back into it? Oh yeah, absolutely. But that's not my MO.
Yeah, that's the coolest thing, and that's what I think everybody aspires to be, is something like, you know, somebody like yourself, where your business is what you love to do, but it's just so hard to get there, and especially at this level, when you walk in here, it's like I can't even imagine ever having anything like this. So it's definitely motivating to see what you've achieved, and honestly, it's almost like it feels impossible to be here. Like, do you think that if times were different, that you'd have this place, or?
Times were different in terms
like
of
in terms of COVID and the prices and everything and purchasing property?
I don't know. I mean, I never would have thought a day in my life that I could ever afford something like this. Even with YouTube at its prime, like this property would cost you $20 million to build if you built it. Never in my life would I fathom having that kind of money to also be able to just pour into something as ridiculous as a compound.
Yeah.
You know, like most people that have that kind of money, they do something smart with it. This would be incredibly not smart. Like, I guess it's smart, like, you know, look at it, like we leverage it well, but like a lot of this stuff, like the amount of concrete here, man, I would never do that, but I'm so glad I have it.
It is insane, but it's cool to see, man. It's cool to see.
I appreciate it.
All right, guys. Well, Adam's kicking me out. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking.
You got to tell him what time it is. I want to know what time it is. You got your phone on you? No, straight up. Tell him what time it is right now.
All right.
It's 11:30 p.m. It is the coldest day in Florida history.
I was gonna say, yeah. So it's been, we're coming up on 2 hours now. We could talk forever, and we didn't really get too much in detail about a lot of the technical aspects of a car, but it was enjoyable to talk about it with you.
Yeah, of course.
I appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much. If you can let the viewers and listeners know where to follow you and find your content.
Yeah, I mean, you just search my name. Instagram and YouTube are the two places I'm the most active. I don't really post on other platforms that much, but follow me and we'll do cool shit.
Yeah. So do we have time to film still or no?
Bro, it's 11:30. I gotta be up early in the morning for meetings.
All right.
Look, I'll give you a power tour, but I'd love for you to be able to come back so I could give you a proper experience of like, I want to give you a ride in a proper drift car so you can feel what that's like. I want to be able to nerd out with you about the builds. I don't want to give you the surface level tour that I'd give someone that doesn't know shit about cars.
That's cool. I was going to plug it, but if we're not going to do it, that's fine.
Plug it and get them to comment and like the video if they want to see you come back. See what I just did there for you is I just got the algorithm happy. You got to remember to weave that into your podcast, all right? Because that's going to make all the difference between this thing getting 100,000 views and 500,000. I got you. It's done.
All right. So if you guys want to see a car collection tour with Adam, make sure you guys like the video. How many likes do we have to get for it?
I mean, I want to say like 100 likes. That way I get an excuse for you to come back down here. But like 15,000 likes would be a reach.
That's a lot. Nah, that's too much.
I think they can do it.
15,000 likes?
Yeah. I mean, bro, if you get 100,000 people watching, that's only 15%.
I've never had a video of 15K though. That's like
this will be the first one. 100%.
Well, what if it doesn't make it then?
Don't make me a liar.
Nah, man. We have to fix that number.
No.
15,000. Then we're never going to do it.
You're never going to go anywhere with that attitude. Comment below if you think he needs to stop selling them so short. See what I just bumped your algorithm again.
All right, guys. So 15,000 likes for Adam. Trey's looking at me. He's
no,
like,
you're gonna just
that's tough, man.
You come from New York. You got to make a special trip, all right? And it's not going to be at 11:30 at night. You're going to come during the day so we can drift and you can see things.
Can we make the number lower though?
No.
15,000?
Yes.
All right, guys.
When you hit 15,000, you got to get your ass on a plane and get back down here. I say 1 month and it'll hit 15,000 likes. No problem. You want to put money on it? I'll put money on it.
Are you a betting man? I kind of do want to.
$1,000 right now.
I kind of do. $1,000.
Yeah, I'm gonna feel guilty taking your money, but
Yo, when's the bet got to be up?
1 month.
1 month.
1 month.
So if
15,000
this
likes.
video doesn't hit 15,000 in 1 month,
Yep.
it's $1,000.
Yeah.
We're gonna.
But you know what though? When you hit the 15,000, you're gonna make so much more than $1,000 that it's gonna be chump change to you, bro. You're gonna
Okay.
be rolling around in that YouTube money, all the cash you can imagine. You know,
This guy, $1,000.
$1,000. Let's do it right here. Y'all saw it. He's got photos of it. 15,000
Okay.
likes in a month. I'm not confident.
All right. So,
But you got to run the thumbnail and the title by me because if you pick a shitty one, it's your fault.
all right, I'll do that. That's
Yeah.
cool. So I'm about to get this 1,000. All right, yeah, so 15,000 likes. We'll do a car collection store with Adam. We'll come back and well, I don't. You said you're gonna drive me around in one of the
No,
cars
I'm going to
too?
put you in like a real deal drift car so you can stop thinking that we're skating around with these high pressure bullshit tires.
All right, so 15,000 likes, guys. Let's make it happen. And thanks again for your time. And hopefully we can make that happen. So for those of you guys who are listening and watching, make sure you guys hit that like button if you're watching the premiere. And also make sure you guys listening on all streaming platforms. Until next time, guys, we will catch you on the next one. Peace.